It's Tuesday. It's time for coffee and cursey words. It's December 7th, which is a day that will live in infamy. So for all of you in the US or the armed services, you probably remember what I'm talking about. For everyone else, you're like, what are you talking about? We'll talk about it a little bit later. But you can't, I mean, in my mind, it's hard to say December 7th without saying a day that will live in infamy because, 80 years ago, Pearl Harbor was bombed. I guess we're talking about it now. I don't know if we can say the BOMB word on YouTube. I have no idea anymore what can be said on YouTube, but historically accurate. So that's what we're talking about. So that's what it is. It's one of those things when you wake up and you're like, it's December 7th. I don't know. Do people not remember anymore? Maybe not. Anyway, it's Coffee and Cursey Words. It's December 7th. We have a busy show and a special guest coming in when there is a break from court. We're going to be joined by good Lawgic, Joe Nierman, who has been attending the Maxwell trial day in and day out, just doing all of the work. You guys are saying, I think your mic is off. My mic looks on to me, so I will double check because I see me, I hear me, and I think you guys can hear me. So just go ahead and refresh because I look and sound good in my ears. So that is what it is. We have lots to talk about today. I'm going to do just a very few quick bits. We're going to do Maxwell trial updates with Joe, then some Duggar updates, then there's a lot of new motions in the Tati case. The Duggar updates are going to be quick. Thank you all. You guys are like, we can hear you. So if you can't hear me, just refresh. So Duggar updates are going to be brief today, but we will get into that more. If I need to do an extra video this week, I'll do an extra one. So we should just get going. Let me know where you're coming in from. I am here with coffee in Middle Tennessee. So let us get rolling. All right, let's go. It's time. We should just get into it. Let's just do the things.
Hey there. If we haven't met yet, I'm Emily D. Baker, the badass lawyer and everyone's favorite legal commentator. I'm the host of The Emily Show, and I break down the legal shit behind the news and pop culture stories we all want to talk about. I have been a licensed attorney for over 15 years, but this is not legal advice. I should warn you, I'm a big fan of the cursey words. This channel is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not fuckery.
Hello. It's so good to see everybody coming in. I try to pull up as many as I can to say hello and welcome. I've seen our international crew already coming in. If I get those, I try to get them pulled up when I see them. And if I don't, I don't. You guys say it sounds like I'm using the other mic. Let's see if, oh, it did. You guys are right. It totally did.
It switched my mic, which happens sometimes in the back end. So thank you so much. That was very helpful. You guys are like, it sounds like the wrong mic. It was the wrong mic. It was the wrong mic. So let us go. Hello, Edinburgh. Hello from Maui. You guys in Hawaii are definitely remembering what day December 7th is. So, all right. You guys are like, yay. We get to hear the real mic. It's the real mic. Will the real Emily D. Baker please stand up? Here we are. Let's go. That's what it is. All right. I am so happy to see everybody. Because Joe's coming in at like 11:30, I'm going to try to get through as many topics as we can so we have some real good time to talk about the Maxwell case, not just what testimony he's seen, but what the jurors look like, how the attorneys are acting. If he has noticed Maxwell drawing the court sketch artist, I've been talking about that on Twitter. There's something so meta about watching that go down. So we are absolutely going to talk all those things with him. So I feel like we should just get to quick bits. Oh, I forgot to grab paper to timestamp things. Emily, don't do that. We're professionals here. Robin, happy birthday in SoCal. Hello from my former home and longtime home. All right, there we go. Now we've got paper and all the things. Hello, Scotland. Hello from England. It was stormy here the other day and it is not now. So I'm going to try to not look at the chat so I could just talk to you guys, and say hello. Running with Scissors said, great interview with Alita and Wizco this weekend. I did not think that we would have that long of a conversation, and I was thrilled that Alita included me in that. It's always so nice to get to talk to other female lawyers, though. Being a lawyer is a profession. There are definitely some quirks of the profession that go along gender lines sometimes, and it is a traditional boys club. And depending where you practice, that is definitely shifting. But it's always really nice to meet other female attorneys and really get to talk about not just law, but that combination of law and life. And I loved that Alita did meme review. I thought it was just so much fun. I really, really enjoyed just getting to have a conversation. And sometimes conversations are long form. When I said that I did not sleep this weekend because one of my dear friends was in town, also an attorney, we can talk to each other for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And then you're like, oh, we should sleep. Sleep's overrated, but it's not actually. In my world, I'm old and I need to sleep quite a lot. So I'm going to get to quick bits and then we will keep moving on. These are going to be, look, hold me to it. These are going to be fast. We'll see. If it feels weird to y'all, it feels weird to me too, to literally move quickly, but we're just going to try. We're going to try it on and see how it feels. Quick bits. Quick bits. Vanessa Bryant settled one of the lawsuits that she's involved in regarding the crash and subsequent death of her husband, Kobe Bryant. She settled with Express Helicopters. The terms of that settlement agreement are, in fact, private, but the case has been dismissed and there's a motion to be dismissed, which means whatever was agreed upon has happened. You don't see the case getting dismissed with prejudice until it happens. So if it was a monetary settlement, that's been done. Whatever happened with regard to Express Helicopters is completed. That case is absolutely over. So with regard to one of Vanessa Bryant's suits, it is over. With the other one, they are still in late discovery. Most of the other people involved in the suit against LA County have settled that suit. We will see what Vanessa Bryant chooses to do with that as they finish discovery. With regard to Carol Baskin is suing Netflix. Carol Baskin suing Netflix withdrew her motion for preliminary injunction, which means she filed it and was trying to block Netflix from releasing Tiger King 2. I have not had a chance to watch Tiger King 2 yet. It's like literally on the top of mind, and I will be watching it and probably doing it. And I have thoughts episode about it, and then doing some content here about the lawsuits and the legal side of all of it, because there's quite a lot of law wrapped up in all the madness that is Tiger King. But she filed the motion for preliminary injunction. We went over it. It read like a resume of how great Carol Baskin was. And then the court declined to rule on it before Netflix released Tiger King 2. And the shit's already out of the horse. So I'm not surprised that the motion was withdrawn. The defense has filed a motion to dismiss and a motion to stay discovery. So we will go over those motions when I go over all the Tiger King legal. But the motions are kind of standard practice where you get the motion to dismiss and then the motion to stay discovery, meaning Carol Baskin's attorneys can't start propounding discovery and asking for things they want to see until the motion to dismiss is ruled on. So, I'm not surprised. Actually, that's not true. I am surprised that she withdrew the motion for preliminary injunction. I think it was the correct thing to do. So, we'll see where it goes. See where it goes from here. With regard to Jen Shah, there are a few new motions. I'm going to pull them up real quick because they're a little quicker than a quick. Well, they're a little more of a bite than a bit, but we're going to do those anyway. So we're going to pull them up. Oh, hello, George. Hello, George. He's like lurking around in the back doing whatever it is he wants to do because he's George, which means Fred will be in here shortly. Alrighty, let us pull up the Jen Shah stuff. If you guys have been following along with the Jen Shah stuff, Real Housewife of Salt Lake City, the last thing to happen was that a Hulu documentary was released. Members from the Department of Homeland Security gave comment in that, commented about Jen Shah, commented about this case, and Jen Shah's attorneys were like, what we're not going to do is have any of that. They filed a motion with court, and they're in New York, Southern District of New York. So they're doing letter filings, which is why the filings look a little bit different. But they filed a motion asking the court for leave to let them file a motion to dismiss. So they're asking for permission to file something in addition. The government responded, and then so did Jen Shah's team. Because these are pretty quick little letters, we're going to go through both of them right now. Because why not? Let us be professionals and share our screens. Yes, let's make that happen quickly and easily so everyone can see it. All right. This is the government's response to Jen Shah's outrage over the Hulu documentary. The government respectfully submits this letter in opposition to defendants Jen Shah's letter motion dated November 30th for the following reasons. The motion should be denied. On November 29th, 2021, a 48-minute Hulu original one-episode show produced by ABC News Studios titled The Housewife and the Shah Shocker debuted on Hulu, a subscription-based streaming service. On October 18th, 2021, ABC News Studios requested from the U.S. Attorney's Office a copy of certain admitted government exhibits from the United States. I cannot pronounce Armin. I don't know. It sounds like a name that should be in the Lord of the Rings. And that's not meant in any other way than to say that's a lot of consonants and I can't pronounce. Omarin, maybe, and the Ketabachi case. These are the two prosecutions that came before this one, which is the Chidi prosecution with this group. There are 3 different prosecution groups that have happened. Jen Shah's in group 3, like she's in boarding group C on Southwest with this prosecution. In accord with the office's standard practice in responding to such requests from the press or public, the office provided those materials, which are a matter of public record. Those cases have already gone forward. Those cases have already been adjudicated. The office declined to make any personnel available for interviews and declined to provide comment. The Hulu show included brief comments from, among other individuals, the acting special agent in charge, also a SAC. We have lots of SACs in our world. The second amended complaint and the special agent in charge. We just context switch on which SAC we're talking about. And supervisory special agent SSA with Homeland Security's Investigation New York Field Office. The government counsel in this case first became aware that HSI officials had participated in on-camera interviews in connection with the Hulu show when a promotional video for the show was posted online on November 18th, 2021. The office has subsequently confirmed with HSI that, aside from the HSI officials, no other HSI personnel participated in interviews for the Hulu show. Okay, so it was just those 2. The following is the entirety of the official statements that were included in the show. So they must have gone through and transcribed. Somebody at the U.S. Attorney's Office transcribed the show to show the court what the statements were. And on paper, it doesn't look like a lot of statements. SAC. One of our operations, on any of our operations, we don't look for specific timing to do arrest. In the case of Jen Shah, she had a television crew that was following her on a regular basis, right? So it was not planned in any way. Our investigators are special agents and need to do our jobs. And I'm happy to say they did it without incident and she was taken into custody. Those are all facts that are in the public domain. SSA. In January 2016, we started Operation Double Down based on an arrest made by the NYPD for narcotics smuggling. The individual who was supplying the narcotics was also involved in a huge telemarketing fraud. Footnote 3. On September 29th, 2021, government counsel in this case learned that the SSA had participated. Oh, wait, that's not footnote 3. That was footnote 2. Sorry. Footnote 3. This comment was immediately followed by displaying a photograph of Ketabachi, to whom the SSA was referring. So making it clear that that is how this operation originally started. They arrested someone, presumably Ketabachi from the other case, and then found that they were also involved in this ring. And that's not uncommon, that one arrest or investigation perpetuates things going forward into other arrests or investigations. It is tremendously common because that's how the Operation Varsity Blues started. Somebody got arrested for something and was like, yeah, but you want to hear some shit? Let me tell you about this over here. So it's not uncommon that this is how this happens. That same SSA said they would pass on what we call lead lists from one telemarketing floor to another. And that is what happened in all 3 of these cases as alleged by the government. SAC, the SAC said, we constantly look at the lavish lifestyle of these fraudsters that these fraudsters are living. And it hurts. It really does hurt, because when you talk to a victim and see how everything they've worked for completely vanished, it's disturbing. And it's obviously why we do this job, and we want to make sure it stops. That's not referring to anything specific, but it could be referring to the Katabachi case. Fraudsters tend to also live lavish lifestyles. Like there's no point if you're not going to enjoy the way you live. I'm turning my heater back on. I'm sorry if you can hear it. It is cold in my room this morning. It's cold in the office. Cold. Let's see. The SSA said, so we just continued with our investigation, and we were able to identify other telemarketing floors in Nevada, Utah, Arizona. They were doing the same thing that they were doing here in New Jersey, except to our surprise, these people have been doing this for over 10 years. So something was the tip of the iceberg, and then they continued following the iceberg down into the depths. I think that's a good analogy, maybe not. They go on to say that the folks that are behind this are pros at what they do. It's disgusting. And what we'd like to tell any victim is, it's not your fault. Please come forward, because we need your help to make sure this doesn't happen to more people. I've talked a lot about this on Up and Adam's show, that there's a lot of shame wrapped up for victims of fraud. It happens in other types of crime too, but in this specific context, people feel embarrassed that people who are professionals at taking advantage took advantage of them. And that's why speaking out is so important. We are going to cover the Chalene Johnson case there, where she has spoken up against a plastic surgeon, and he is now suing her for defamation. And it's one of the tools people use to silence people. So let's see. The SSA said, I don't think we do enough to make the public aware of how different types of schemes and frauds about the different types of schemes and frauds out there right now, especially during COVID, when people are home and they're on their computers. They're constantly answering the phones, and these perpetrators know that this is a prime time. A lot of fraud during COVID, especially with like the Paycheck Protection Program. Lots of people were using that as a way to like get their foot in the door to defraud people, not just the government. That happened too. SAC said, when you talk to a victim and you see everything they've worked for, and then you see where these fraudsters are living their best lives, living the best lives they can live, and not worrying about the money in any kind of way, they don't have a problem sleeping at night. I have a problem sleeping at night. The SAC said, we are going to try our best to get as much of the money back as possible. Getting restitution for the victims is always our number one priority, which we'll see if it happens in this case. The money that we seized will continue to recover, and will continue to recover is not even a fraction of what the victims lost. Unfortunately, because these fraudsters, these people live very lavish lifestyles and able to hide their money overseas. There's a lot of countries that don't recognize money laundering as a crime, so we're not able to seize the money. The comments, they say, do not violate the rule being to not release non-public information or opinion. So what they're saying is, because this information about the narcotics smuggling, though I had not dug through all 3 of these prosecutions, they're saying, look, it is in public record because it's in the Katabachi case. Therefore, it's not new information. None of this is new information. They go on to discuss that the statements don't violate the local rule against pretrial publicity. That the defense said that the statements were rife with statements of opinion as to defendant's guilt and the merits of the evidence in the case, as is evident from a review of the transcript of the comments set forth above. This is a blatant mischaracterization, and none of the comments came within the ambit of local rule 23.1. So the government is saying, shockingly, the defense has characterized this in a way that we do not agree with. These are the statements, Your Honor. Done. They say the sole comment the HSI officials in the Hulu doc that was specific to defendant was the benign statement about the defendant's arrest, which, by the way, was on television. In the case of Jen Shah, she had a television crew. So we've already read that statement. We're not going to reread it just because it's later down here. This comment is a far cry from one that would pose a substantial likelihood of interfering with a fair trial or otherwise prejudice the due administration of justice. Yeah, you know why? Because Jen's on a TV show. You're on a TV show. You're on a TV show. So if the jury knows about you before trial, it's because you're on a TV show. I wonder if ABC and Hulu would have even done a documentary if Jen had stopped filming when she was arrested. I mean, maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't have, but on a TV show, making statements about the case, and Jen has made statements about the case. They said this doesn't violate the pretrial publicity rules. They say this is particularly so because the circumstance of the defendant's arrest. I lost this. This is not spaced easy enough for my eyes. This is particularly so because the circumstances of the defendant's arrest have already been the subject of widespread publicity by a television show on which the defendant was a cast member at the time of her arrest and on which she has continued to participate since her arrest without any apparent concern that additional publicity of the circumstances of her arrest and the allegations against her may affect her ability to receive a fair trial. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the court is going to go, agreed. Bonk. We're done. I really appreciate that the government went through the transcript and laid out all the statements. If they didn't include every single one, I imagine we will see it in the defense's response, which we will look at next real quick. Because that's what you would do as the defense. And then they talk about some of the articles where she has been discussed. They talk about the HSI officials' general statements are not about the defendant. There are multiple cases here. There is what is this footnote? Is it sassy? Let's see. Neither of these statements pertain specifically to the defendant and in any event were within the presumptively permissive categories provided in Local Criminal Rule 23.1E. Footnote 5. Footnote 5. The defendant also complains about statements allegedly made nearly 4 months ago by an assistant U.S. attorney who is not and never has been a member of the prosecution team in this case, to others made in a private conversation at a restaurant. Even assuming the accuracy of defendant's claim, it is plain that a private conversation at a dinner table, even in a restaurant, is not something that a, quote, reasonable person would expect to be disseminated by means of public communication. So we didn't expect that was going to end up in, page 6 or whatever. They say the court should deny the defendant's leave to file a motion to dismiss. They go through the law and the discussion that a motion to dismiss is not warranted. I agree. I said that at the beginning. If anything, it's going to be Vortier that's going to address this. Sanctions potentially, but pulling out the statements made it very clear. And this is why I appreciate that I am not an investigative reporter. I didn't go and get a transcript and look at the statements. The government provided them. And if they're wrong, the defense will provide it in their next motion. We just read the court documents and provide color commentary to the best of our ability, based on our, experience. They talk about the defendant's public profile being really the thing. The defendant's public profile is more of the thing than the Hulu documentary. If the defendant wasn't on a TV show, the Hulu documentary wouldn't happen. Motion to dismiss is dumb, Your Honor. So that is what they're saying. Now we've got the defense's reply. Let's see what the retort is from the defense. This was filed yesterday. Ooh, hold on. Before we do that, I'm going to go check. I wonder if the judge filed like a minute order ruling. I doubt it, but I'm going to go look anyway. And the mods are like, no, Emily, no, not to the Pacer rabbit hole. You're going to find something and we're going to derail. No, we're not, because Joe from Good Logic is going to come in when court takes a break. So we can't derail ourselves too far because we're going to be very mindful of the fact that he needs to eat and do the things while he's also on lunch break from court and then also tell us what's going on. So we will be mindful. Let's just see if the judge has done anything. I've logged in. This case has so many defendants, it takes forever to scroll. Like these are all the different defendants, their charges, their attorneys, all the contact information at the head of their case on Pacer. Let's see. Letter response is the last thing we have here. So we will head back. Nope, wrong window. We will head back to this. And let's see what the defense says. As the court is aware, we represent Jennifer Shah. Yes, we respectfully submit this letter in reply to the government's letter. Great. Indeed, by doubling down on its per se and indefensible violations of Rule 23.1, the government has proven that without severe sanctions, it will continue to trample Ms. Shah's rights with abandon. That is strong language. Look, zealous advocacy. Zealous advocacy. It is their job to do what they are doing, and that is what they're doing. As an initial matter, the government has completely failed to concede or even acknowledge that it was improper for supervisory agents from HSI, who are members of the prosecution team, to appear on a national news program. I know that the Hulu doc was done by ABC. But all of you that have watched it, will you please put a 1 in the chat if you think that Hulu documentary, The Housewife and the Shah Shocker, is a national news program? I feel like maybe we're redefining things in a way that they aren't. And I think when you go too far with that, with a court, everything becomes hyperbole. Like when you take a Hulu documentary and say, this is a national news program, then it pulls too far. If you think that this is a Hulu documentary that's meant to be kind of a tabloid reporting piece, put a 2 in the chat. I want to know. 1 for, obviously it's a national news program. 2 for, look, it's called the Shah Shocker. Okay, Adam and Eve are going to have a Shah Shocker, I imagine. Have they trademarked it yet? Adam and Eve, trademark something called the Shah Shocker. I want to know what it is. I will be highly entertained because we do things for Emily's entertainment, right? I see 1.5. So it's like, maybe, but maybe not. I see a lot of 2s up in this chat. You guys are like, I don't think the Hulu documentary counts as a national news program. And when hyperbole goes too far, it can actually hurt you because the court's like, counsel, everything is exaggerated. Because the first paragraph, we get the zealous advocacy, but then we also get the reframing of a Hulu special as a national news program. And I feel like it's maybe a reach that they don't need to make. But that's just my opinion. They're saying that the government failed to address that supervisory agents from HSI appeared on a national news program to provide opinions and other commentary about Ms. Shah's pending case. Well, but did they though? We looked at the statements made. Did they give opinion? I mean, they say that fraudsters living a lavish lifestyle hurts their heart. I'm paraphrasing. They say that with the investigation, they found other sales floors. They say that the folks that are behind this are pros at what they do. Okay, maybe that's opinion that could be construed to relate to Jen Shah. That's fair. They say it's disgusting. That's clearly an opinion. And they want to tell the victims it's not their fault. I feel like that's a fact. Maybe some feel like that's opinion. What else did they say? This is January 16th. That's just facts that are in court records. We don't make the public aware enough of scams and frauds. That's, irrelevant to this, but also fact and opinion. It's both. It's both at once. They talk about talking to victims. That's their work experience. And they talk about fraudsters. These fraudsters, maybe I can see in the light of the documentary how you can say when you're saying these fraudsters over and over that people, because they're watching The Housewife and the Shah Shocker, that they're going to interpret that to mean this person specifically, not these groups of people or people who do things like this, like the thing that Jen Shah is alleged to have done. So I don't know. They say instead the government suggests that the agent's behavior was benign and unproblematic. We love unproblematic popping into a lawsuit. Thank you, defense counsel. It is giving me life. Look, when I take issue with what lawyers do, normally I will tell you why. I have no issues with Jen Shah's lawyers being zealous advocates for their clients. Their writing is good. They have not alleged wild murderous conspiracies. They have not slung inordinate amounts of mud about, things that are irrelevant. And again, the writing is good. And so I appreciate them doing their job. When I disagree with some of the things they're saying, I'm like, ooh, that's a little far. Ooh, that's hyperbole. That's just my opinion. But again, it's not saying they're out of boundaries. It's saying this is why this might be a problem, especially if you're looking at legal writing when you're going, okay, how far do we push it? Push it real good. How far do we push it? Look at some of these things and find where it is. And also that's going to matter judge by judge. Some judges are like, do not push me. And some judges are like, push it real good. Go ahead. Be a zealous advocate. Do what you need to do for your client. I can read through the lines and that's fine. So it's not a dig at this attorney. I actually think the defense has done good work. You guys are going to keep me singing today. Ooh, baby, 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 ooh, baby, baby. Shit, that's going to get clipped out of context and come back to bite me in the ass at some point. Oh, well. We're going to do it anyway. It's where my brain is this morning. Push it real good. God, do you guys remember in Glee when they performed Push It at the season 1 in the high school auditorium? I loved Glee. All right, we're going to move on before my brain continues to derail us any further. We stand unproblematic lawyers. The government suggests that the agent's behavior was benign and unproblematic, given the already public nature of Ms. Shah's profile. It was a fair argument. It was fair. We know of no exceptions to 23.1 for public figures. Also a fair statement. It's just because she's famous doesn't mean she has different rights. And that, in the case of criminal prosecution, is true. And they say, because there's not one. Similarly, the Constitution does not carve away the right to a fair trial for people who are in the public eye. Also true, though I feel like Twitter has forgotten this most sacred rule, that just because you are a high-profile defendant or a housewife, you still have a right to a fair trial, and that is the most high standard and should not be violated. Even if people think you suck and they hate you, you still get a fair trial. So I guess I say even if you suck and people hate you, you get a fair trial. I should say most especially if you suck and people hate you, you should get a fair trial. It's easy to protect the rights of a fair trial with a sympathetic defendant. It is much harder with a defendant who you're like, yeah, but go to prison forever though. Like for me personally with Josh Duggar, it's Josh Duggar deserves a fair trial. All the I's dotted, the T's crossed. But also, I would very much, on a personal level, like to see him go to prison. But I still want to see it done properly. So that's where my brain's at with that. They say quite the opposite. Oh, I should have kept reading. Keep reading, Emily. They're going to tangent with you. Quite the opposite. The bedrock of our justice system. The bedrock of our justice system is the premise. That says promise. The promise that all will be treated equally and guaranteed the right to a fair trial, regardless of what a handful of prosecutors and federal agents wants. I think it's actually ABC producers and Hulu that wanted things here, but whatevs. Lady Justice, I should grab her. I talk about her a lot. She's back there. She has a blindfold on for a reason. Justice is supposed to be blind and meted out the same way no matter who's in the chair. The rules are the rules are the rules. The law is the law is the law. To be sure, Local Rule 23.1 in the Constitution exists precisely to strip individual prosecutors and agents of their own whims to decide who does or does not deserve a fair trial. Everyone does. Ms. Shah does. That is fair, but that does not necessarily mean that they violated the rule. And also, the defense ignores here that part of their argument is that the actions of the government will deprive her of a fair jury pool. I think it's fair for the government to turn around and say, right, but is it the Hulu documentary that has gotten into the jury pool's mind, or is it Jen Shah being on television saying, do we need to get Kim Kardashian onto this team? I didn't do anything. And sitting down on television with her lawyer saying, my only problem in life is that I tried to give people a better life. Like, come on. You can't have it both ways. They get to argue it. They're the defense attorneys. But also, they say that the agent's actions, furthermore, and evermore, were extraordinarily and completely outside of the bounds of reasonable behavior. We've got two very different opinions here between the government and the defense. I'm not shocked by that difference, but that's what we got. The government asked this court to consider the agent's statements entirely outside of the context in which they were given on the program entitled The Housewife and the Shocker. It feels like it needs jazz hands. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. This context could not be ignored as the trailer invites viewers to dive into the bombshell accusations against the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City cast member Jen Shah and features a photograph of Miss Shah. The show was unmistakably focused on Miss Shah. Fair. That's a fair characterization. Characterizing it as a national news program, maybe not, but this is a fair statement. Unmistakably focused on Ms. Shah and the allegations against her. The government's contention that these agents' comments were not specific to Ms. Shah is preposterous, given that the title of the program and its subject matter, Ms. Shah. Shocker. In addition, many of the agents' comments were overlaid with pictures or videos of Ms. Shah. Well, that's not on them, though. That's ABC. No reasonable person could watch the program without believing that the agent's comments were about Ms. Shah. But that is ABC leaving the impression, not the agents who only control the words that come out of their mouth. And even sometimes that's hard. Make no mistake. The government cannot shift blame to Hulu or ABC. Oh, I was just doing that. Keep reading, Emily. Y'all are on the same train of thought. This is me playing devil's advocate in real time to this defense letter. It's just too funny. Okay, make no mistake, the government cannot shift the blame to Hulu or ABC News for the manner in which the final program was edited. Oh yeah, sure. Because the HSI agents had final edit authority, right? It was like, no, let us preview and authorize this before it comes out. Just no. The government and its agents publicly expressed their opinions to the press about a pending case. Therefore, the government is fully accountable for all that followed. Like any wrongdoer, the government is entirely responsible for the entire damage caused by its violation of the rules. Lastly, the government's attempt to separate the prosecutors from the conduct of these agents is a distinction without a difference. They've got all the legal buzzwords in here, and I'm living. Because truly, the agents are part of the prosecutorial team. There's no getting around that. They are. These HSI agents are members of the prosecution team. Agreed. Likewise, the government's attempt to distinguish these supervisory agents on the show from the case agents is similarly misplaced. Frankly, the fact that these HSI agents are supervisors to the case demonstrates the government's priority in destroying Miss Shah and denying her the fair right to trial. I mean, I feel like that's taken it a little far for me, but I don't think the government's priority is destroying Miss Shah. I don't. Also, when Miss Shah makes public comment about the case, they are allowed to respond, and that might come up. It's like, well, the Hulu documentary is a response to what Jen Shah's already said in public about the case. So the shit's already out of the horse. I'm very interested to see what the judge is going to do. The improper and unrepentant conduct of the prosecution team has caused irreparable damage to Shah's right to fair trial. I still think voir dire is the solution. Let's ask the jurors if they've seen the documentary. And if they have, yeet them. That's all. This extraordinarily flagrant behavior calls for a murderous conspiracy. No, that's not what it says. Calls for extraordinary action by the court. The government's letter is not only a confession, but confession through projection, but a clear proclamation that it considers itself above Rule 23.1. Your Honor, the government are dicks who think they're above the rules. Or that it considers Ms. Shah unworthy of the protections of that rule. Either way, the government's letter is a clear warning that it will continue on its path. This path to destruction. Unless the court acts severely. Sanction them, Your Honor. Sanction them. Oh, there's a footnote that doesn't look sassy. But the footnote is, at a minimum, the defense should be entitled to discovery regarding HSI providing background information to ABC News for the show. The contact between the HSI agents and ABC regarding the interviews for the show, as well as other discovery regarding the government's blatant attempt to poison the jury pool. There is no way that this is going to poison the jury pool. It's just not. Like, if they're watching Housewives, this isn't going to do more. Like, They close with, it is vital that the prosecution team be prohibited from continuing to shirk its duty to refrain from publicity, providing opinions about the merits of the case and Ms. Shah's guilt or innocence. Ms. Shah therefore reiterates and outlines the request, which is to be able to file a motion to dismiss. I don't think the court's going to grant a motion to dismiss. I think the court's going to say, hi, everybody. This is a matter for voir dire. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask if they've seen this Hulu documentary. And I bet you're going to find a bunch of people who are like, Housewives, I don't watch that shit. Like Adele. No, what did Adele say? It will ruin my brain. It will poison my brain. Poison is the poison of the jury pool. Adele said something when she had her Power of Makeup done on Nikki Tutorials channel. I love Nikki Tutorials. On Nikki Tutorials channel. And she was like, I can't watch Housewives. That like literally rots my brain. I'm paraphrasing, but it was that. I imagine you will find plenty of jurors in New York who are like, I don't watch Housewives. I'm busy at gallery openings. See, I see New Yorkers as very sophisticated. I mean, unless they end up with like Sarah Galley from Andy's Girls on the jury pool. And then she'd be like, yeah, I run a very successful podcast. I would love to be here. But I feel like maybe I should just be in the audience over there. All right, let us move on. We are at 11:45. Joe will join us when he does. I'm just going to make sure he hasn't messaged me and been like, help, I can't find your link. I'm going to send him a link one more time. They might not have broken for lunch yet, which is totally fine. So, I'm just going to message him because we have lots to talk about. We're going to talk about Duggar next, and then we will go from there. All right, let us move on. So I think that the answer to all of this will be counsel will ask the jury, but the judge could grant the motion to allow them to make the motion to dismiss and cite the law, protect the appellate record, and then deny it. That could happen too. I don't know what the court will do. I don't know if this court is more in favor of allowing, like, I want to hear more from the lawyers or not. I think either way, it's going to end up being this is for voir dire. I would be surprised if there's sanctions, but it doesn't mean there won't be. We'll see. Okay, let us move on. We're going to do some Duggar updates. I have some H3 updates. I don't know if we'll be able to get to them today, but we will. I should probably share them on social so everyone can see them. But let us talk about Josh Duggar real quick. Let me swoop and stamp. Swoop and stamp. Because, replay crew, we love you. Timestamps will be below. I just wrote down the timestamp and then I'm going to talk about something else real quick. Louisiana lady said it will kill my brain. So poison is why it came to mind because we were talking about poisoning the jury pool. But yes, Adele, it will kill my brain. I love that. Love it so much. That's hilarious. What I was going to say is in a matter of housekeeping, This week is our members only live stream on Thursday. We cover lots of topics. We cover lots of things. There is always some sort of a story time. It just happens. So if you are not a member yet, you are welcome to join either on the channel or on Patreon to support the content that I make. Tomorrow, I'm putting out a knowingly completely demonetized podcast, and I'm super happy about it because one of the things that having the support of the amazing Law Nerd community allows me to do is say what I'm going to say, create content how I want to create it. And if things get demonetized, know that it's more important to talk about the facts than to worry about monetization, because I have the support of such an amazing community. And it's why we do members only live streams. So the members only live stream will be at 7 p.m. Central on Thursday. The Patreon is lawnerdsunite.com. That will get you there, and you'll see the tiers. There's a Law Nerd tier here on YouTube. If you are like, girl, I live on YouTube, I want the members only live streams, then that's here for you. And you can get the little gavel icons. It's so much fun for me to see the yellow icons. For those of you that have been channel members for a year, it's just amazing. So the support really does allow me to just speak facts and be like, we're monetized or we're not. I mean, which is sometimes like there's a little piece inside me that's like, but Emily, it's December. Like facts, if you watch a lot of YouTube and you see Vlogmas and everything, the CPM, which is the measurement of how much a particular video makes, the CPM can be double and sometimes triple in December. Advertisers spend a lot of money on advertising in the end of November and in December. So it really isn't my first concern having every single video monetized. Facts are more important, and I think tomorrow's episode's a lot of fun. Do you get a gavel with Patreon? No. The gavels live on YouTube. That is under YouTube's control. So if that is the most important part, that's here on YouTube. And I have a breakdown between the two. There's a little video on the channel. So let us continue on. Replay crew, love you the most. Let's get into this proper timestamp now that I've rambled and reminded y'all that we will have a members only live stream. Those normally last about 2 hours as well. Emily, can you talk for an hour? No, it's difficult. It's sure difficult. Let's swoop and talk about Josh Duggar a little bit, because we're going to talk about Josh Duggar a little bit. Josh Duggar is still on trial. The defense is in their case. The way a criminal trial works is that you have jury selection. You have your motions in lemonade, your pretrial motions, then your jury selection. Sometimes those things overlap, like we saw in this case. Opening statements, the prosecution's case, because they have the burden. Then the defense case. The defense sometimes puts on witnesses. Sometimes they don't. It's their choice. So then you get the defense case, because remember, the burden's on the prosecution. The prosecution has to prove that the person did the thing beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense job is just to poke holes in that or say that the government did something wrong and try to get some evidence kicked out. Generally, the defense does not have to prove their case. When you get to cases like self-defense, there is more that the defense has to prove. And we talked about this on Alita Legal Bites' channel on Saturday with Kyle Rittenhouse's defense attorney, Natalie Wisco. We were talking about the fact that the jury instruction says in Minnesota what is in the defendant's mind. Well, it's really hard to prove what's in your mind if you don't testify. So self-defense can be one of those defenses where it puts the defendant in a position where they really do, though they can't be forced to testify, they have to prove their defense versus just pointing out that the prosecution didn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. This seems to be more of a hole poking defense. I'm not surprised by that, where you really try to say, okay, but the prosecution didn't do this and didn't do that. Oh, you're right, Wisconsin, not Minnesota. My bad. I say things. It happens. States. Wisconsin. Yes. Apologies to Minnesota and Wisconsin both. Don't mean to offend either of your fair states. One has more lakes. The other one, I think, has better cheese curds, but maybe that's controversial. So with that, the defense has to bring in doubt to the case. When I say poke holes, I really mean you bring in doubt, like reasonable doubt. Sometimes I see like no light getting through. It's like beyond a reasonable doubt. And when the defense comes in and shows some doubt, jurors can say, but I have doubts about this and this and that. Therefore, I cannot say it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Therefore, it's either a hung or an acquittal. That's the defense's job. That's what they're trying to do here by bringing in their computer forensic expert. The attack the evidence is really all they have. They can't attack the facts. The jury has heard what has happened. The jury heard from the investigators that Duggar used the same password or Duggar's alleged to have used the same pass. Why are we saying alleged? That was their testimony, Emily. It was their testimony that the person who used the computer partition had the same password on it that Josh Duggar used on his personal accounts, including bank and social media accounts. So the jury has heard some pretty strong evidence. So whatever their computer forensic person will say to try to say, oh, somebody, there was some drive-by hacker that did the thing. Well, the government also has propensity evidence in this case, the propensity evidence being the prior bad acts of hands-on child. Ugh. Those acts are going to come in to say, right, they're saying some random person just swooped by and used this computer that happened to be partitioned, that happened to have access to the dark web, that happened to do all this sketchy shit. What are the chances? But you also have someone who, I don't know, has a propensity to do this because this is what they've done in the past. The children were of the same ages. The passwords are the same. Is that doubt for you? I don't think so. So at the end of the prosecution's case, we saw the defense make a motion to dismiss. This happens in every single criminal case ever. When the prosecution rests, the defense makes an oral motion to dismiss based on insufficiency of the evidence. I have never seen a case where that has not happened at the rest of the prosecutor's case. Then again, I had a front row seat to a lot of those because I was the prosecutor. So I think it would be malpractice if someone didn't make this motion at the rest of the prosecution's case. They don't often get granted. In fact, they very, 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 very rarely get granted. If they're going to get granted, then the prosecution probably shouldn't have brought the case. But it can happen if the prosecution had witnesses that didn't show up or witnesses that didn't testify to the key elements of the crime. Then it's your honor. The person's charged with having a gun and there's no testimony that there was a gun. There's no proof that there was a gun. Then there's no evidence of a core part of the case and it has to be dismissed then for insufficient evidence. Again, every single case. And it happens when the prosecution rests their case. So there's no deeper meaning to that other than that is standard procedure and that is what happens. I saw a lot of you asked me about it on Instagram Live yesterday. The reason I wanted to bring it back up is because Instagram is like holding my live hostage. That's hyperbole. But my live wouldn't save onto my phone, wouldn't re-upload onto my stories, and is like sitting in my archive and I cannot get it out. So because I was asked about it so much yesterday, I really wanted to make sure it was clear because it's not something you hear about a lot. If you're not paying close attention to trials or working in courts or working as a lawyer, you might not know that that is not something weird, that is not something groundbreaking. It is literally standard operating procedure. It is just about as basic as you get as a defense attorney. So it's just not a big deal. It's just not. So they are into their defense case. I imagine that the cross-examination of their tech expert will be quite long today from the government. And then after that, we will see if Josh Duggar will testify. The defense doesn't need to bring any other witnesses. I imagine their tech witness will be their main one. Then the prosecution once the defense rests, the prosecution has the opportunity to bring rebuttal witnesses. They could bring up their tech expert again to see if there are any parts that they want to reiterate, any kind of loops they want to close from what the defense expert said. There will be a few rebuttal witnesses. Then normally there is a break where the court and the lawyers will talk about jury instructions. They will prepare for closing arguments and then closing arguments will occur and then the jury will deliberate. So those are the things that we are looking at. And the thing I am very interested to see is whether or not Duggar will testify. That's what I'm keeping my eye on. He opens a whole lot of doors if he testifies, and none of those doors are going to be good. But ego is an incredible thing. So you just never know. And remember, the lawyers could be saying, no. This is a terrible plan. Please don't do it. Oh God, don't do that. Don't do that. What we're not going to do is have you testify. But the defendant gets to choose. And even if the attorneys say, I don't want you to do this, the defendant can say, What we're going to do now is I'm going to testify. It is their absolute right, and they can testify even if counsels advise them not to. So we might see. And yeah, we might see. So that's really it with the Duggar case. I know there are subreddits. I know there is lots of media reporting coming out and people who are present in court giving updates, but we at the end of today we will see. I'm very interested to see if he chooses to testify. That's for me the most interesting part, and then to see what rebuttal witness the government brings. Those are the two things I'm looking for next. We should the judge in the Maxwell case is lunching at counsel. I don't know what lunching at counsel means, but it sounds like the Maxwell case is finally taking a break for lunch. It's about 1:00. It's almost 1:00 Eastern, 12:00 Pacific. So we will see. Is he really egotistical enough to testify? I think he may be. It would be a terrible plan. Josh Duggar should not take the stand, so I'm hoping his ego or his dad insists that he takes the stand. I mean, look, I cover the Alec Baldwin case tomorrow. And while the actions are wildly different, and I'm in no way equating or equivalating the two, the behavior of someone who is driven by ego tends to be same across different areas. Like ego-driven behavior or egocentric behavior tends to follow a pattern. And it is not for me to diagnose anyone. It is not for me to do anything other than observe. So I watched the Alec Baldwin interview with regard to the Rush shooting. And the thing that really struck me at the beginning, he's like, I couldn't wait. Like he could not wait for the government open investigation to finish, the criminal investigation into a shooting wherein he held the gun and a woman lost her life. He could not wait for that criminal investigation to be done. He had to be heard. Like, had to, compelled to. This interview was not in his best interest, and it's not a good look. And it's going to come back to bite him in the butt. However, he had to. So I wonder if Duggar will feel deeply compelled to testify, like especially if somebody is ego driven, to sit there and listen to everyone else talk about you. It will be very, very interesting to see him come forward, and I imagine that if he doesn't testify, it will be a very hard decision. So Susan said, I loved how the behavioral panel broke down that interview. I need to go watch. I tried not to watch before I watched the Baldwin interview because I wanted it to be my impressions of it. But now I will go back and watch everyone that's broken it down. I really am always so fascinated by the things that people who are really keyed in to behavior break different things down. There's so much to that, and I find it absolutely fascinating. So you guys are like, Alec Baldwin's wife tried to stop him. Yeah. And he was a total dick. And he was like, I'm talking. I'm the one answering the questions. And I just, we'll see. We'll see with Duggar. I suspect he will try to testify. All right. We're going to move on real quick to Tati Westbrook. I suspect that this will get broken up because Joe will join us when he gets a chance. But for now, we will get started, and then we will just timestamp all the things and jump to the timestamps. All right, let me timestamp this and pull it up and do a brief road so far of where we're at and how we got here and all the things. So let us swoop. Also, there's like over 4,000 of you here live. Happy for each and every one of you. Please go ahead and do the likey, subscribing things if you have not. We hit 180K. Like my outrageous, ridiculous goal of trying to get to 200K by the new year might actually happen. Who knows? We're trying. We're just like setting up random benchmarks and being like, let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can hit it. And then when Joe comes on, don't worry. If you're from his audience, I will absolutely make this so the chat's not subscribers only. I tend to leave it on subscribers only so that when we talk about controversial individuals, we cut down on the trolling. And that really helps because the law nerds are the greatest place to have a conversation on the internet, in my opinion. Let us talk about Tati Westbrook real quick. Tati is involved currently in 2 lawsuits. There were 3. The one in California got dismissed for form nonconvenience. It hasn't been dismissed with prejudice yet. It will probably move to Nevada. Haven't checked in on that yet. We'll check in on it soon. The one that's been popping off is the one in Washington between Clark Swanson as an individual and Tati Westbrook and James Westbrook as individuals. It is the personal part. And I just feel like the more we watch these lawsuits, the more that the Westbrook lawsuits are like mirroring Triller lawsuits. Like the lawyering is better. But I feel like it just is starting to mirror like okay, well, my business sued your business, but now I'm suing you for defamation and like, meh. And everyone's spending a ton of money on legal fees. And then we're ending up with lawsuits that are literally nothing but allegations and shade of people who are super pissed at each other. Oh, it's good Lawgic. I see him in the background. So I am going to put a pin in our discussion of Tati Westbrook and pull Joe up onto stage. His information is in the description and it will be shared in the chat. So if you are not subscribed to his channel, please make sure that you do that. And I am going to let his camera come on and then welcome him into the Law Nerd chat. Hopefully, I don't know I'll ask what Joe calls his community that they are here to. But right now I don't see your camera just yet, but maybe your audio only, and that's okay too. So let me swoop and we will talk about the Maxwell case with Joe Nierman from Good Lawgic. So let us welcome Joe. Hello, Joe. Can I hear you? I need to put my headphones on or I'm not going to be able to hear you. But just so you know, I cannot see you. And I don't know if that's intentional or not, but let me see if I can hear you and see you. Joe, are you there? Oh, I see him trying to be there, but he is not there yet. Let's see. I see your mic, but I do not see you. All right, Joe, I'm going to let you pop out and come back in. So we are just going to give him a minute as he's trying to get connected from court. I will answer a few questions and then we'll swoop again. So we'll just timestamp because technology is so much fun. So we're going to talk about the Maxwell case with Joe. I'm sure he will pop back in. The court is on break. If you guys have not been following the Maxwell case, I'm going to pronounce it wrong all the time. Ghislaine, depending on where you are. Ghislaine is how I hear like Viva Frei pronounce it. Ghislaine is how I hear others pronounce it. I am terrible at pronunciation. It goes along with the dyslexia. It is just a thing. Which is why I call it the Maxwell case all the time. But the case is going on right now in the Southern District of New York. The prosecution is going after Maxwell for essentially being the ringleader of all of a bad sex trafficking ring. That is just what that is for minors. That was connected to Jeffrey Epstein, and that this is a prosecution a long time coming. So with that, there has been a lot of testimony. There's been a lot of names dropped. We've seen people that worked in the different residences. There are houses all over the place. So it is a very, very interesting case. The defense in this case really is that she is being held responsible and it is not her fault. That this is a prosecution because of Epstein. And because of Epstein, they are taking it out on her. He died in custody under, I think it's safe to say, suspicious circumstances. There are a lot of questions about how he died in custody. And with him dying in custody, the defense is like, look, they're just picking on her. I've shared on Twitter the images of her, the court sketch artist is drawing her and she is sitting at table drawing the court sketch artist, which is such a fascinating conversation about whether she is engaged in watching her prosecution, whether she is just making a power move against the court sketch artist. The reason there are court sketch artists in federal court is because there are no photographers, there is no recording. So these are the old school ways that we still see what's happening in court, and you will see sketches of the Duggar trial. The courtroom in the Duggar trial is set up in a really interesting way. And I don't know if they changed that for COVID or that's always been their practice. But in the Duggar case, you've got like at the back, you've got the judge and the witness stand and like the court clerk or the judicial assistant, all kind of against the back of the courtroom. And then you have the jury box to the side. And the jury box to the side allows the jurors to really clearly see both the attorneys and see the witnesses. But then the attorney table normally is facing the court in all the courtrooms I've ever practiced in. Counsel table faces the judge. So it's like the judge at the back of the courtroom and then the lawyers face the judge. And then they can also see the witnesses and then the jury's to the side of them along the side wall. In this, the jury and the counsel tables are paralleling each other and the court is horizontal at the back. It is the strangest setup I've seen. And that might be so the defense can more clearly see the jury and watch them. Normally the prosecution sits closest to the jury and really gets to be able to keep an eye on them, I think, more easily because of the way that the layout is. But that is because the prosecution bears the burden and they sit closest to the jury. The defendant sits furthest away. So with all of that, it's interesting to see the court sketches because you get a sense for the layout of the courtroom. You get a sense for all the people that are there. And it's a really interesting thing. And I shared that on, let me just pull up Twitter real quick and I'll show you what I shared I don't want to switch back topics and then have Joe come in and then be like, hey, topics. So I'm just waiting for a minute for him to get back if his phone will allow him to. Hopefully it will, because I know he's trying to share from the lunch, which is why I put my headphones on so I could hear him when he comes back on. So let me pull up what I shared on Twitter and share that with y'all. So this is one, there's been multiple sketches, but this is her, Maxwell, sitting at counsel table between her lawyers. Prosecution, I'm assuming, is direct examining a witness, and she is sketching the court reporter back. And there's so many like levels to this, and I loved all of the conversation. So if you guys follow me on Twitter, come over there and join that conversation. I wonder if there are more court sketches from Reuters from that particular sketch artist that have been shared. I'm sure there are. I just haven't gone seeking them out. But Reuters had this one. I bet it has others. Just have not sought them out. All right. So now I have to decide, do I switch back to Tati Westbrook and get going? Or do I, Mr. Unicorn, you are so funny. Or do I just stay on this topic and hope that Joe's phone works? We're going to give it a minute. I'm going to look for a few more of the sketches. And it's just kind of old school, the sketch artist. It really is. And there's something kind of dignified and regal about it, but there's also something so interesting. Oh, there's an article. Hold on. There's an article from The Independent about the sketch artist responding to, okay, let's just do that, to Maxwell sketching them back. So artist responds after image of Maxwell sketching her back goes viral. Oh my God, love. Let me take this off until Joe comes back. Oh, my nose sounds so congested. I'm going to blow my nose real quick. Hold on. No, I don't want to make me big. I want to make the article big. I want to make me silent. All right, we are back. I should also be back. The New York artist whose drawing of Maxwell drawing her during trial went viral has said the socialite has sketched her a few times in a row. Speaking to the Intelligencer, Jane Rosenberg spoke about the image that has captured the imagination of people and said, in the pre-trials in that little courtroom, that's when the sketching started. She sketched me a few times in a row. Rosenberg also revealed that she, Maxwell, started nodding at me and waving at me. She even spoke to me once. It's really great for me. I'm not going to wreck it. I'm going to keep it going. I need to see her face. It's like a photographer. They wait for the moment and say someone's name and they turn to them. That's the same thing. The drawing shows Maxwell looking straight at the artist with a blank expression while doodling on a notepad in front of her in the courtroom during trial. Social media was amazed at the bizarre image, with several people saying that Maxwell was mocking the artist. Ms. Rosenberg told Newsweek that she had interacted with the defendant during the trial on a number of occasions. During the interview, this sounds, by the way, my interjection, this sounds like when you have celebrities that interact regularly with paparazzi, right? That they now know this sketch artist and have been interacting with her. And it's very interesting. So I'm going to put a link to this. I see Joe back, so I'm going to pull him up. I'm going to link this and I'll put it in the description below as well. It's just fascinating to me that we now have comments from the sketch artist. So we are going to re-welcome our friend to the channel and friend to all of you who is sitting through this trial day by day to bring us all of the information and make sure that we can see him. Joe, you're here.
Hey.
Welcome. All right. Can you hear me?
How are you, Emily?
I'm good. It's good to see you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
I have awful service.
I'm sorry. I'm going to let you introduce
This is
yourself.
terrible service.
And we will try.
Yeah,
Where are you?
I'm not sure if I'm coming through well or not.
I see you fine and I hear you fine.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you.
Yeah, so I wasn't getting any service here in downtown New York, and I came into a Starbucks and tried using their Starbucks Wi-Fi, and I don't know if their Wi-Fi is able to handle streaming. It seems like it's a little beyond their capacity because you look frozen to me. I have a feeling that I look frozen to you.
You do not. You look great to me. I'm going to keep pretending that you can hear and see me because you look great.
Is there a way I can call? Let me ask you this. Is there a way I can call in to you and just do audio?
You can just do audio.
Can I call into you and do audio?
If you turn off your camera on StreamYard, you should be able to just do audio. But I think I can have you call in.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
All right, call me. I'll message you on Twitter.
No.
All right, I'll message you.
I'll try texting you and tell you.
Yep.
I can't hear you, so I'm going to ask you if you can text me your number.
I will. All right, we're gonna get Joe as a call-in. We're gonna figure out new things today. All right. All right, I'm gonna remove Joe from the stream, and we're gonna get him calling in.
Okay, fine.
Okay, bye.
I got that, man.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can figure that out. Hold on. We need cords. I'm supposed to be able to do this, y'all. Real life. Real life. We're gonna bring Joe back. Let me plug this into my Rodecaster and see. We're professionals here. We're gonna all learn new things together and see what happens. It's gonna be great. Let me plug this in. I have never been more thankful that I actually have the link to plug my phone in than I am right now. Like, I've never in my life been more happy that like I did something in advance that's going to work out. So we'll have Joe call in and see how that goes. Oh, let's fingers crossed and hope this isn't a disaster. And make sure I don't type my phone number in the chat instead of on Twitter where it's supposed to go. All right. I've never had a call in on the show, so I don't know how that's going to go, but we're going to give it a try. I have my phone. Let's see. Phone is connected. So you guys should be able to hear it. We're going to gain that up. And then when he calls in, we are going to literally hope for the best. Because there's no way to really have him call in on StreamYard if he's just not getting Wi-Fi. So fingers crossed that it works. We will see. This is what live reporting must feel like. No, I mean, they have like Wi-Fi trucks and stuff so that they can actually make things happen. So we're just gonna say hello to the chat real quick, take some questions. I'm gonna keep trying to timestamp things that aren't getting timestamped, and it's gonna be a long stream, and that's okay. And then we'll get back to some of the Tati Westbrook stuff. Okay, the phone The phone is ringing. Okay, everybody cross your fingers and let's hope this works. Hello.
Hey.
Oh, I
How
can
are
hear
you?
you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. I hope the stream can hear you. I'm sure they're going to tell me that they can. But can you introduce yourself on audio to the stream real quick and
Sure,
say who you are?
All right. My name is Joe Nierman. I host a YouTube channel called Good Lawgic. Been doing that for about a year. I am a New York litigator turned YouTube content creator. And right now, my big project is that I go down to the Southern District of New York and watch the trial in the only place that the public can watch the trial, which is in one of the viewing rooms that they make available for journalists and the public. So that's become my big project now. And I'm following this every day. And I've turned my channel, I say, into Maxwell House because that is all I'm doing.
You have been doing so much Maxwell coverage and you have been there day in and day out. What is it like for you just sitting through trial? Can you guys in the viewing room see the jury, or can you just see the counsel and the defendant and the witnesses?
So they do their best to not enable us to see the jury. There's actually like a split screen, and it's not nearly as good type of video coverage as we saw, like first example in the greenhouse. There's no close-up of the witness. There's just a split screen where on the left hand of the screen we'll see prosecution and defense counsel, and there's a lectern in the middle there, which they have a little glass booth. It looks like one of those old style like phone booths. I guess that's a COVID thing that they sort of have that there. And on the right side of the screen, we see the judge and whichever witness is taking the stand. And the witness looks so small, especially when they try sharing exhibits. Then it's impossible to see anything. But even when it's regular at their fullest size, when a witness took the stand, the first victim to take the stand, they identified as Jane. That was a pseudonym they assigned to her. Literally, like, we're an hour into her coverage, and I was asking other people, the other journalists there, is she Caucasian? Is she Asian? It was so hard to see. And she's someone who's famous for having bright blue eyes. But that's how poor the video quality is as far as what we can see of what's going on there. So
you have no way to really see the witness expressions and the expressions on the attorneys. You're getting like basically an audio feed with some pictures.
Pretty much, yes. I think that's the best way to put it. But look, when they start crying, which happens on occasion in a trial like this, so you can see that, you can hear the faltering of their voice. But even the video is not even directly synced with the audio. It's like the video is like 2 seconds behind the audio, and it's really a very shoddy. It's like the shoddiest video work you can possibly imagine if you want to try and gauge, like put myself, like I'm a member of the jury watching the witness on the stand, which is really what you're trying to feel like, like what does it feel like just hearing about these facts from the shoes of the jury?
Right. And
so
you can't really do that when you don't see the facial expression of the witnesses because they matter so much.
Correct. Although I would tell you that, one of the significant advantages and something that we as attorneys are familiar with, but the public would not understand, is the distinction between even this level of video audio quality that I have compared to a transcript, and how much better an understanding as to how the vibe of the courtroom is when you actually have audio video. And the reason is this: the best way to explain it that I came up with is sometimes you have a text message, you have a text conversation with someone, and you'll read a text message from them. You'll sort of be like, what? Why are you yelling at me? Or why are you upset? And they're like, I wasn't yelling, I wasn't upset. But it's just that's the way it reads in a text. And it's the same thing with the transcript. If a witness is asked a question or accused on cross or something, and they say, no, I didn't say that, you don't know when you're just looking at the plain words that you have to realize a court reporter is just taking down literally word for word everything that is uttered. But you don't know when you're just reading it, if they're asked a question, if they broke down crying
Right.
and trying to like helplessly say, no, I didn't, even though everyone understands, yeah, you did.
Right.
Or if they were adamantly screaming, no, I didn't, and barking it, it reads exactly the same.
Right.
So there's no way to get like a feel for what's happening. That was really critical with respect to the testimony of the house manager from Palm Beach, Mr. Juan Alessi.
What was your big takeaway from that testimony? Because you're saying that was some of the critical testimony for you. What was your takeaway from that?
I thought his credibility was incredibly high, and he was cross-examined by Paliuka, and I think that what you read in the transcript may look a lot stronger than what I or the people who are sitting with me were taking from his cross-examination, and what I would assume the jury took from his cross-examination. A lot of so what happened with respect to his testimony, I mean, I should really explain what happened on direct.
Sure.
Right. So your audience should be aware that Jeffrey Epstein has several houses, one mansion bigger than the next, and one of them is located in a fancy part of Palm Beach, which they call the island because it's really sort of attached to the West Palm Beach, separated by water, by what they call the intercoastal waters. So his mansion there in Palm Beach, he had a person running it named Juan Alessi. And he said he started working there in 2001 and 1991. And 1992 or 93 is when he first was introduced to Ghislaine Maxwell. And she walked up and he pretty much assumed it was a girlfriend. And she basically said, yeah, I'm your boss. And whatever I tell you, you're going to do.
Right.
And he said the nature of the relationship changed from being cordial to being very professional. And he really describes her as Cruella de Vil. And that she just started becoming very demanding, saying, Jeffrey doesn't like to be looked in the eyes. Jeffrey wants to be served breakfast at 5 a.m. and you're going to work here till 10 p.m. And
she's the enforcer. He's the one saying she's the enforcer, and he's the non-victim witness saying she was the right-hand enforcer that did everything, which is exactly what she's on trial for.
Right. And yes, that's very well put. And throughout this entire time in this trial, one of the consistent things we keep hearing people when they describe Ghislaine Maxwell dealing with them is that she comes across like she's the mouthpiece. Like, this is what Jeffrey wants. This is what Jeffrey likes. Talking to girls, don't you think that this is the sort of girl that, hey, don't you think that this sort of girl that Jeffrey would like? It's always like that she's like either the mouthpiece or that her entire existence is just dedicated towards catering towards his needs.
Proclivities?
Well, I mean, look, he's described as having an insatiable sexual appetite. Like, just there's never enough. Alessi said that he would get massages once a day when he first started there, and by the time he left in 2002, it was 2 to 3 times a day.
Yes, and these are not massages for my audience that isn't following this case closely. These are not like massage MB massages. These are those kind of massages.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. In fact, anyone who's come in and testified basically said that every massage has the Epstein special at the end of it. Yep. And they say it starts as a regular massage for the first 45 minutes, and then he rolls over, and that's when the party begins.
Ugh,
so, right. So, the focus here. So, like with respect to Juan Alessi, I felt that like just paint. There's no crime in being
creepy.
No, no. With respect to Ghislaine Maxwell, there's no crime in being Cruella de Vil. That's not a crime unto itself, you know. And even when she comes forward with her manual, when she produces a 30-page manual, he's like, "There's no way I can do what you're asking me to do."
The 30-page manual, just for my audience, is that with the 30-page manual, this is the daily running of the household manual. Like,
Correct.
This is what you do to manage this house daily. And that's a lot, 30 pages.
Yes, right. And he's like, this you need a staff of 10 people to do this. I cannot do this alone. I'm already working from 5 in the morning till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And when we were talking about the cross-examination, I felt that, so on direct, what did he pin him in on? He basically tied in that he was never allowed to go into his massage rooms when the massages were happening, so he didn't actually witness anything. but he was actually the cleaner upper
Right.
afterwards. Like whatever disgusting thing you would think you would find at the end of a Jeffrey Epstein massage, he found it.
We were talking about that in other a little more crude ways on other podcasts, but he was the guy cleaning not only the room but any sheets or towels and also the sex toys that came into play here. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And like he's the toy washer, literally.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, that's the hygienic way to be. Otherwise, you're one for infection. So, you know, at least health and safety protocols were somewhat adhered to during these horrific cycles of abuse of young women that were really groomed into this.
And by the way, with respect to how they had to dress, and this sort of plays in a little bit on the whole upper crust thing and looking down on all the people they were dealing with. Like he was told he's never to have his hand in his pockets when he's addressing Jeffrey or Ghislaine, that he's never to talk to any guests. He's basically, and that see nothing, say nothing, hear nothing, and that you're basically supposed to be, you know, the perfect minion here.
You're supposed to be invisible, it sounds like. Do things, say nothing, fade into the background.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. He also was very instrumental as far as he sometimes would pick up girls, bring them to the house. He would take phone calls. He drove Ghislaine Maxwell around. And this is what came out on Cross more than on Direct. And I couldn't believe, this is why it's like Palahniuk's doing such a terrible job here. I mean, he opened up a doorway for Juan Alessi to start describing how when he was questioned by Palahniuk, and he starts pushing him and saying, you know, you drove girls back and forth to the house. You took phone calls from girls. When girls would show up, you're the one who would lead them up to the room. You would set the room up. You would lead them up to the room. And when they left, you were the one who paid them.
Oh, so Maxwell's attorneys are kind of trying to pass the buck and being like, no, it's this guy, it's this house manager that's the one that's shuttling and trafficking these girls. It's not Maxwell. So what happened next?
So he started screaming. There was nothing like that at all. They said he didn't have you call girls for him. He goes, it wasn't a request, it was a mandate. If he told me, and it's not that I didn't find girls. They would say, call a girl, and his English, but everyone has to understand, he comes from Quito, Ecuador. So his English, just his choice of terminology is not the choice that most Americans would choose.
Right, because English is his second language, so he's picking the best words for him. That makes sense.
Right, exactly. And sometimes he literally say the word no when you could tell he means yes. So it's like, they'd be like, did you ever drive girls? And he'd say, no, I drove the girls. Like, and then so when you're reading the transcript, it comes out, you know what I'm saying? It comes out as no, and he literally means yes. And you can tell when you're watching him what he means. But if you read the transcript, he sounds like he's an idiot, even though the guy was pre-med when he was back in Ecuador. He's probably a pretty bright guy. But the Palahniuk kept trying to play on that. And what I don't think he's really appreciating is, you know what, in Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell circles, where people like Vicky Ward look up to them and idolize whoever's wealthy and appreciates them, to that sort of audience, yeah, you want to treat someone who's a blue collar guy like he's dirt. They understand that. They're totally fine with that. But the jury here is not that. That's not what your jury is. Your jury here is your blue collar New York workers. And even if they vote blue, which everyone in New York City does, they're not voting blue because they're necessarily woke or because they're upper crust snobs. They're a different type of Democrat, which is basically, it's like they're minorities, and minorities tend to be Democrat, but they also have a different set of values from the upper crust that Ghislaine Maxwell is used to, that even Bobby Sternheim is used to.
A more down-to-earth working class jury. Well, compared to Epstein, all of us are working class.
Okay,
you know, but you're really saying it's kind of more of a salt of the earth jury is what you would expect in this district of New York, and they are going to understand and probably have had this experience with the boss who's like, this is what you do, and it's just that expectation that you follow what your boss tells you, you shut up and you do it, even if it's insane. It sounds to me, I've never lived in New York. It sounds to me like something out of The Devil Wears Prada. It's like, no, make it happen, people. What's wrong with you?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the crowd that Ghislaine runs around with. In fact, I just saw Vicky Ward. I don't know if you're familiar with her name.
No idea who that is.
She was the one who was she broke the story on Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay.
And a lot of people hate her because she became like besties with Ghislaine Maxwell afterwards. And she, to this day, she's following the trial. She's here in the trial. She was responsible, I think, for the documentary called Chasing Ghislaine.
Mhm.
And she was also featured in the documentary series I saw called Filthy Rich. And the first season was about Jeffrey Epstein. And yeah, so I think she hated Epstein, but she loves Ghislaine.
That's so
And
interesting.
yeah, and what she's like, yeah, I like Ghislaine. Everyone in New York likes Ghislaine. And what she really means is, yeah, in New York circles of people who earn, I don't know, $500,000 a year minimum,
Right.
those people really like her because she's really good at swimming in those circles. She's a brilliantly manipulative woman, Ghislaine. That's what I'm convinced of, that she's brilliantly manipulative. And I think that in her social circles, she will kiss up and brown nose to anyone who she thinks will help advance her interests, and anyone who she thinks is beneath her, I think she would treat them the way she treated Juan Alessi.
What's really interesting is we saw reports of that with her Maxwell's father as well, that he had that kind of charm, but also social stratosphere savvy, which is something that I totally don't understand
It's
and is not in
detestable.
my life. Yeah.
It's completely, it's everything you hate about rich people.
So
Pretty
you
much.
weren't surprised seeing Maxwell drawing the sketch artist drawing her. Like that type of behavior doesn't surprise you at all after seeing her at this trial and hearing about her behavior, that intimidation.
No, yes. Devil Wears Prada, I think, is the best way to lay it out there.
I work in pop culture references. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And you know what? That's why people love you. And rightfully so, because it makes you much more relatable, that you can easily draw a picture for them that they can envision in their minds.
Right. Have my hot steak here by noon. I don't care that the restaurant doesn't open till 4. Make it happen. And that's from all of the reports I've read and from watching your reporting on the case. And I don't think what audiences appreciate is being in trial, even if you're not the attorney in trial, being in court all day, every day is also exhausting. It's a lot to stay engaged. It's a lot to watch. And there's a lot of boring bits. Like staying tuned into that is a lot of work. So
oh my God.
Right?
This morning, the first hour and a half this morning, I literally was like trying to not fall asleep when they were showing picture after picture of just, here's Ghislaine and Jeff. Here's another picture of Ghislaine and Jeff. Here's another picture of Ghislaine and Jeff. And it's like they look like a really doting couple. Like they look like they're deeply in love with each other in these pictures. And these all came from his hard drive in his townhouse on the Upper East Side here on 71st Street.
Well,
so
it's interesting because I saw the chat. A few people called her his consigliere. I'm going to pronounce that wrong. Consigliere. The G's in there. I don't know know where to put the G's, but in terms, I worked in gang cases and in prostitution cases, and that was your bottom bitch. It's the person who handled all of the business for the man that was in power, and you know, your ride or die. I think it's the Gemma Teller in Sons of Anarchy. It's the woman who's running everything, and that's really the picture we're getting from this trial. Is that was Maxwell's role? She was the woman in charge.
The first question of substance asked to the first witness, which was the pilot, Larry Visosky. And the first question is, what was her role in Epstein? And he said she was the number 2 person under Epstein. She oversaw all of the houses. Yeah. So Juan Alessi is the house manager in Palm Beach. But this guy has a townhouse in New York. He's got this massive estate in Palm Beach. He's got a much, much bigger estate in New Mexico called Zorro Ranch, which is like a house I can't even describe to you. This mansion that's 2 stories high. It looks like it's surrounding a massive garden, and it's like this empty. It's like a square facility with this big courtyard in the middle overlooking a ravine, and that's his second best place. His best place is what they call Little St. James, or sometimes Little St. Jeffy, depending on who you ask.
Private island.
And that's his private island, which the pilot described as saying that aside from the side houses they had, with respect to the main house, what they did is, he said, imagine if you took every room in a house and made that room a house unto itself. The kitchen is its own house. The dining room is its own house. Each guest room is not a room; it's a house.
Right.
That's the guest, and he's like the living room is a house. He's like it's like a house that exploded into multiple houses. So
and this is where the rich and powerful would stay, and they would fly in
correct.
the victims from all over. Have you heard names being dropped by the different witnesses that have surprised you?
So, I mean, if you've been following this case, there hasn't been any names that have been of great surprise. Larry Visosky name dropped and said that he flew Bill Clinton. I heard him just say many times. Someone else said that hear him say 26 times. He said he flew Donald Trump once. And I want to be clear before I go forward here. Not a single name that I'm going to drop, aside from Prince Andrew,
right,
has been in any way tied to any of the sexual entanglements that Jeffrey Epstein was famous for. And so far in the trial, that has been no exception. And a lot of people think, especially because Maureen Comey is the daughter of James Comey, that this is too political for them to like even want to start getting involved with dropping names. And we haven't heard names come up very much at all, if at all, on direct. And so a lot of people are critical about that. But to be fair, your focus here is you want to focus on the evidence that's going to pin down Ghislaine.
Yes.
You're not looking to make a sideshow of turn into a tabloid the trial into a tabloid magazine of what names can we get out there.
Right. And it's not even appropriate or necessarily relevant to do so if they're not accused of anything. I think it more paints a picture of why this went on so long, and maybe why Epstein and Maxwell were so emboldened. It's because they knew they had not just the elite top fraction of 1% of the wealthiest people, not just in the US, but abroad, but they also had the power elite when it comes to politics. And we're so deeply connected. I think it emboldens this behavior, even if those political figures weren't involved in the sexually improper behavior. Their connection to Maxwell and Epstein allowed this to go on, because why would he think he was anything other than above the rules of mere mortals and could do whatever he wanted? Because he's friends with multiple presidents and everyone else. So who's ever going to come for him? He's untouchable.
Bam. Spot on. That's one of two reasons. That's one of two reasons their names come up. The other reason that it comes up is because domination is a major part of the whole grooming process. It's the fifth part of the grooming process, and part of domination is basically displaying to these young girls, this is who you're around. I'm going to take you to Mar-a-Lago and introduce you to Trump. Right. And then I'm on the phone right now with Bill Clinton. And understand that back in '94, or even the early 2000s, so Trump was a name unto himself, not in a political arena,
celebrity. Yep.
But just as a huge, massive, wealthy celebrity. So, but the point of throwing those names out, and that's the only time they seem to come out, is not as far as them doing anything illicit, rather than Jeffrey Epstein throwing those names around for the purpose of being able to dominate and control these girls by making them feel like they're completely out of their element.
It lends credibility to the grooming as well, because what I've seen from some of the victims in other interviews they've given and things that they've stated is there was always this threat, and that's part of grooming. So people don't talk, is there's this threat of, I can hurt you and your family. And oh, by the way, who's going to believe you because I'm friends with Bill Clinton and Donald Trump? Like, we have the political power, we have the wealth. So when I say that I will end you and your family or harm you and your family, of course a teen's going to believe it. And of course, they're going to be internally tormented to remain silent. We have a super chat from Viva Fry, who said, get the easy conviction so they can close the case and move on with minimal political fallout. My humble assessment vlog coming today. I like the plug, the super chat and the plug. Thank you, Viva.
Nice. It's funny you say that. When on Sunday, I saw it on Sundays. I'm going to do in addition, I have a regular live stream that I do nightly from 10 to midnight Eastern. And during the course of this trial, I basically invest 2 hours into just clipping what I covered from that happened earlier today. And so I spent literally 2 hours just going over all the meat and potatoes of everything that happened during that day of trial. And on Sunday, I actually do a weekend I do like a week recap, which is a 3-hour show I do from 9 till midnight on my channel. And Viva Barnes have their show on Sunday from 7 to 9. And at the very end of their show, they were actually talking about this trial. And I really thought about sending a super chat there saying, hey, right after the stream ends, jump on over to me, because I'm going to give you everything you want to know about the last week of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial.
Yeah, it's really been exactly what you are covering. And I've actually, while we're chatting, I've got your channel pulled up so that not only does everyone have a visual, but it's not just my face staring at a screen while we have the audio coming in. So I've got your channel pulled up, and if people want all of this coverage, you've got so many videos breaking it down. It's all there, because you can only cover a trial like this, one trial. Like, there's not time for anything else. And there's like hardly time for lunch processing this
I'm on trial
and turning it
this
around.
Is my,
yes.
It's like,
your trial.
it's like I'm a litigator involved in this trial. That's how much I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, and I jump on, get on a train and try and get here by like 8:30. So that I can, like, get in there on time, because it takes a half hour to process through here. Yeah. And this judge here, who I have to say, I happen to be pretty impressed with her as being impartial and fair. And sometimes that's great for the prosecution, and sometimes it's terrible for the prosecution. There was a terrible mistake the prosecution made just yesterday that could be potentially really damaging. And she's like, look, I understand, but my hands are tied under the rules of evidence. I can't allow you to bring this in. And I can go into that story with you, because
yes.
But my point is, so then, she goes till normally 12:30. Today she went to like 12:50 or so. And she'll give like a break for 10 minutes in the morning, another one in the afternoon, and but that's it. That's
not a lot of breaks.
Right. She's constantly moving. And then she goes till at 5 o'clock sharp. She's like, boom, that's it. We're closed for the day.
All right.
And then what am I doing? By lunch, I'm uploading a video as far as assessing what happened this morning. And then when I finish court, I'm uploading another video as far as what happened during the afternoon testimony. Then I jump on a train, run back home, I basically get home usually around like 8:30 or so, 9 o'clock, set up my stream, and I'm streaming from 10 till midnight. And then I basically go to sleep like around 1 o'clock, and I have to wake up at 6:30 the next morning and do it all over again.
I know, because we were in our group text on Twitter last night. It must have been after 1 a.m. for you, because it was after midnight for me, and we were just kind of like, what's sleep anyway? It was funny when you brought up the way text messages don't always come across right. I was thinking of mind maps. I'm like, yes, there seems to be this one.
Oh my God, that was so great.
It was so funny. To
Poor
the law nerds,
Robert.
I will tell that story probably on our members only live stream.
Oh my God, that was hilarious.
It was pretty funny. But we do have a large group.
I think he was addressing you. I think he was worried about you stealing his stuff.
I think so too.
He was accusing you of being a thief, and that
Grifter.
Robert thinks, that you're a thief. You're going to steal his work and just start using it for yourself. And oh my God, that was just great.
It was really funny. So for those of you that don't know, I haven't talked about this much on my channel, but most of LawTube is we have a Twitter chat. After Nick Rekieta so generously opened his channel to everyone, he's like, I'm going to live stream like an insane person for 10 plus hours a day during the Rittenhouse trial. Y'all come join, bring the commentary, jokes, thoughts, life experience, trial experience. Let's have a chat. And it really, I think, brought all of the lawyers into one place where we can now have conversations about the different cases we cover, because we're all doing different stuff. I know Nate is covering more of the Jussie Smollett case. I've been focused more on like pop culture stuff. All of it's happening right now. And then you've been just really embedded as the on the ground boots for this case. I'm very tempted to fly to New York and stay near the Southern District for Jen Shah's trial. I might come out there for that trial, but it's going to be a long trial. Jen Shah, Real Housewife of Salt Lake City. So we have one more.
I'll gladly defer that one to you.
Yeah, we have one more super chat. It's a lot of work from Psychoencyclodonia. I think I pronounced that totally improperly. It said, "Thank you, Emily, for having him on today. It has made the events and context of the trial easier to understand, coming from someone who has been attending the trial." So,
Yeah, let's get into that mistake.
yes, what did the prosecution do? Because you've got to eat and upload.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat. I don't eat lunch. I eat lunch during the afternoon break. But so let me tell you what happened yesterday. And so we've had, as of yesterday, we had 2 victims come in to testify. The first one was given the pseudonym of Jane, and then yesterday they brought in Kate. And Kate, both of them are like celebrities. The first one, Jane, is on a soap opera for the last 22 years. Kate has been like an international supermodel, even though she denied that on cross-examination. It's like, no, I'm not an international supermodel. And Bobby Sternheim is like, you've appeared in magazines in England? Yes. You appeared in magazines in France? Yes. You appeared in magazines in Italy? Yes. You appeared in magazines in the US? Yeah. She's like, I'm not sure about the United States. You've been in this movie, you were in that movie. And she didn't identify the movies, but she's like, you were in a movie with a famous British actor. She's like, yeah. And I have to tell you something. You know, Ghislaine Maxwell had an eye for talent when it came to finding pretty girls, because these girls developed into women that I think any woman would be happy if they grew up to look like that. Now, so when Jane testified, and the reason they put her on the stand, she was actually 17 when she met Ghislaine Maxwell. And the judge instructed the jury that you're going to hear testimony about this, about sexual encounters with Jeffrey Epstein, but you're instructed that you should never take any implication from this that there was ever any crime involved in any of these activities that are being described, because she was 17 at the time that she first met Ghislaine Maxwell. And when she met Jeffrey Epstein, and that when you're reaching your verdict, you're instructed to not base any form of conviction on the testimony that on testimony about her acts that she engaged in with Jeffrey Epstein. So the jury must have been like, well, why the hell are we listening to this?
Right, and the relevance would be what?
The relevance was this. Last week, we heard from Dr. Rocchio, and she went through 5 stages of grooming. And she basically said, the first is that you want to identify your target. Then you want to isolate them, find an excuse to be around them on a frequent basis. Then you want to start using lies and manipulation and deceit to try and strengthen that bond and make them feel completely dependent on you.
Yeah, the gaslighting bit.
Right. And then she said, then you want to start desensitizing them towards sexuality, making it like it's nothing, it's no big deal. And then finally, you want to have dominion and control them as much as possible, because that makes it less likely that they'll tell, and that you can continue with your form of abuse for extended periods of time.
To go find another one. Exactly.
Right. So, and what we saw with Kate's story was she told over her story about how she was poor living in London. She was taken by her boyfriend to Paris, where she met Ghislaine Maxwell, and she told her about how about all her family struggles. And boom, she put a bullseye on herself. I'm a perfect target. And it's not unwittingly, she was 17 at the time, and she didn't realize who she's talking to, a viper who's looking for exactly that type of candidate. Right. And sure, she gave her a phone number. A couple weeks later, she gets a phone call from her and invited over to Ghislaine's house in London to have tea with her. And she was very excited about this, because she said she was really impressed by Ghislaine Maxwell. She gives a great impression.
This is a charming, charismatic, wealthy society woman
of the world,
paying attention to a 17-year-old, and 17-year-olds, of course, know everything. So I can see being
she actually said it. Right. It wasn't even that. It was more that she's like, this woman was living the life that I was hoping I would be able to live. Yes. And if she's willing to take me under her wing, I thought this could be an invaluable connection. So she goes over to her house and she meets with her, and she's talking more about her family and all this other stuff. And Ghislaine and how she wants to go to Oxford. And Ghislaine tells her, you know what? You really need to meet Jeffrey Epstein, because he makes things like this happen. You need to be ready to move when this happens. I mean, I have a good friend, Jeffrey. I'm going to introduce you to him. I think that you're the kind of girl he wants to help out. And sure enough, she's invited back a few weeks later when Jeff Epstein is there. And the way she describes it, it seems like it's so brilliant the way they lured her in. So she said, I walk in and
predators are ingrained. And it's very interesting to see. It's something that always blew me away in criminal prosecution. They always find the one. They have a very uncanny sense for finding victims. And it is bizarre to see it happen when that's never been your experience. So yeah, it is a bizarre skill to be able to identify the perfect target when it comes to grooming and victimization, particularly of young women.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then when she describes that first meeting with Jeffrey Epstein, she said, I walked into the room, he's on the phone. When he hangs up the phone, Ghislaine's like, this is the girl I was telling you about. She's like, oh, it's nice to meet you. And she starts like, and Ghislaine is like very girlish. And she's like constantly like very, very lively, very, very engaged. And she's like, you have to see how strong she is. You don't understand. She looks small, but she's really strong. She's like, give him a squeeze so you can feel how strong you are. And then she's like, here, try dig your hands into his shoulders. And she starts giving him a massage, and you think it's going to end up being like, okay, boom, like just like that. She's a victim. No, that's not what they did. He's like, I gave him a massage. He gets another call, and he was complimenting how strong my hands were. He gets a call, and I got ushered out of there. And when I get ushered out, and that was the end of that meeting. And a couple weeks later, she calls me up and she's like, Jeff's regular masseuse canceled today. And we were thinking about how you have such strong hands. And we're wondering if perhaps you can step in. And she had no experience as a masseuse at all. She's like, she's thinking to herself, I want to strengthen this bond with Ghislaine, and Jeffrey's supposed to be able to help me out. Okay. So she goes to the house. She's led up to the massage room, and Ghislaine's standing at the door, and she says, have fun, and closes the door. And Jeffrey's there wearing just a robe. And he takes the robe off, gets on the massage table, and she ends up getting the full special there. So, and when she comes out, so that's basically, step 3 as far as the lies, the deceit, manipulation. They're saying, we're going to get you to Oxford. We're going to take care of you. And when she comes out, Ghislaine is like, so how was it? Did you have fun? Wasn't it great? And she starts making jokes about men and their weenies. Like, who uses that word when you're in their 30s?
Yeah, no one.
But she's trying to talk like a 17-year-old. Right. She's trying. I think that's part of her manipulation and desensitizing.
She normalizes the behavior.
Yes,
and
that's what we've seen.
She normalizes the experience. See, you're in with us now. This is just what we do. And it catches people off guard. And it's like, didn't you have fun? Most 17-year-olds, once you've put that impression in their mind, didn't you have fun? It's going to be like, sure. Yeah. Because you're not going to argue with this adult telling you that that's what's supposed to happen. And you're not going to say, how did I get here? Which is how we get to multiple young victims being trafficked in this. But I think the chat has pointed out that part of this is a woman that was in London. And so the age of consent there is different, which is why they're not trying to think about whether this underage activity for the US would be a crime there, because she, it sounds like, was the witness to lay out the grooming process, which so many people aren't familiar with. And I think it's something that is important that people be familiar with, because this is how it happens. It starts innocuous. And if somebody's like, hey, your kid's so great, I want to take them to the movies. No, if you don't have a kid my kid's age, and even then when you do, I'm going to be with you. No, this is how this starts, is taking kids and giving them opportunities and special attention and making them feel like there's a huge benefit to this. And it overrides all of those red flags.
Yes. Yeah. Everything you said. Yes. And the really shocking thing, she describes how the next time she came back there, exact same thing. This time he's not even bothering with the robe. It's like, and she comes downstairs and Ghislaine introduces her to another really young girl. And she's like, isn't she pretty? Don't you think Jeffy's going to like her? like she's just basically been turned into,
Right.
and she's like,
Now she's part of the process. She's part of the team.
it's crazy.
Yes.
It's really crazy.
Well,
So this was
it's human
all
trafficking, and this is how this happens. It's almost like multi-level marketing recruiting, where they like bring you in, and then they're like, "See, your neighbor's here too." It's just, and then they start using the underage girls to make other underage girls more comfortable. It's all part of the process that allows this to continue on, and we see it in most trafficking cases. This is like when you look at like an MLM and you look at a trafficking case, you're like, oh, this is what it is. This is a typical process for how this happens. This just has to be with people who are extraordinarily wealthy versus a lower echelon of the same behavior.
And just to understand the depth of the sharks that you're looking at that we're examining here in this trial, understand, ask yourself, how did Jeffrey Epstein make his money? Do you know how he made his money? No one knows.
I have no idea.
No, right. No one knows. And what he basically, so in Filthy Rich, they introduced us to this guy, I don't remember his name, who basically went to jail for running a Ponzi scheme. And he's like,
was it Ryan
Jeffrey
Kavanaugh?
Epstein. No.
Sorry,
sure.
I couldn't help. It's a joke for the channel. I could, because I've been covering the H3 lawsuits with Ryan Kavanaugh and Triller, and the biggest part of the defamation suit right now is Kavanaugh taking issue with jokes being made because his former business partner alleged that he ran a Ponzi scheme. I couldn't help myself. I apologize.
That's okay. But this guy himself, the Ponzi schemer, is obviously a really good con man, and he's like, I brought in Jeffrey Epstein underneath me, and I'm the one who ended up going to jail, and he ends up with all the money. And and he's like, and I have no idea how he did it, but he's like so charming, and he's so brilliant in the way he handled himself that he's like, anyone would fall for it. He's like, I don't know, I wouldn't fall for it again. Like he's that good at what he was that good at what he did, and that's how he made his first like 400 million, and then he ended up scamming. He ended up scamming the owner of Victoria's Secret, Les Wexner, who now hates him, but basically controlling all of his assets and controlling his monies and taking his monies from him. And Les Wexner, used to be best buddies with him, and now spits every time he says Jeffrey Epstein's name. But so that's really how he built his little empire. And
I love that you say his little empire with his mansions everywhere and his first $400 million and this private island.
Bill Clinton was sitting president of the United States. It's not like he was like, he was the most powerful man in the world, and he's like, coming 26 times on his plane. That's insane. It's insane. Now,
don't interpret. He's saying traveling 26 times in his plane.
Correct.
That's what he means. He's not using.
Right. When I say traveling, and I just want to point this out, Donald Trump flew on his plane. He flew on his plane. He flew on his plane from Florida to New York. It was not like he was going to Little St. James. He was like, his flight canceled on him. And he basically was like, hey, Jeff, can I get a flight on your plane to New York? He's like, oh, okay, sure.
Who do we know that's flying this way? Can we hop another private jet? But I wonder if they're going to forfeit all of these properties to start selling them off. It'll be very interesting to see if
I'm not even sure who inherited them from Epstein.
Yeah, what's happening with all this stuff.
I have no idea, but I do need to give you the people who are following for me. I think they're probably waiting for my update as to what happened today.
Yes,
I didn't give you anything on. So I just want to wrap up as far as what happened with Kate and the mistake that the prosecution made, and then I'm going to get to my update from today. Because today we had a third victim come in. So I need to share her story with you. But with respect to Kate, the big mistake the prosecution made is there's been a huge fight over schoolgirl costumes that were found by the FBI in New York when they executed their search warrants. And there were pictures of the uniforms, and they have actual physical uniforms that the prosecution promised the jury they're going to introduce them. You're going to see the schoolgirl costumes. You're going to see the massage table, which they brought in on Friday. You're going to see all this stuff. And the problem they have is trying to get the schoolgirl costumes in. Now, during her testimony, Kate made reference to the fact that when she came to Palm Beach, that Ghislaine laid out on a bed for her. When she first came to her room, she saw a schoolgirl costume there. She came down to Ghislaine. She's like, "What is that?" And she said, "Well, I just thought it would be so funny if you would serve Jeffrey tea in that." So go
Go
put it on. Be a good girl.
Go try it on.
Yeah, be a good girl. Go put it on.
Let us have a look.
And
Weird.
And that just led to like, another. So she actually wore a schoolgirl costume for him. And after she finished direct and then cross, and she held up pretty well on cross. There was some shaky moments, but she held up pretty well on cross. And there was a tiny redirect. And then to the next break, which is when the judge tends to take care of motions and issues. So the defense stands up and they said, look, we've been talking about this whole issue about the court allowing this evidence in on the schoolgirl costumes. And the only witness who's supposed to be coming forward and testifying that she actually wore a schoolgirl costume was Kate. And she has been excused because she finished her testimony. And there was never any question that was directed as to whether or not she wore these costumes or this has anything to do with her. So we'd like to
the prosecution never said, are these photos of the ones? Are these the ones you wore? They never laid a foundation for what they want to introduce with this witness.
Right. They never tied that in. So they said, well, we were thinking that, once we were showing that he has a proclivity for schoolgirls, now that's grounds to bolster her because the defense attacked her credibility. So the schoolgirl costumes bolster her and they enable her to have that. And the defense is like, bolster her. She did she's doing this in 1994 in Palm Beach. And these were taken 15 years later in New York. Right. There's no reason to think it's the same costume. And between you and me, there's no way in hell it's the same costume. You think Jeff is schlepping around some 15-year-old schoolgirl costume instead of just buying 100 of them? I mean, really?
Right.
So there was no question so the prosecution is like, well, we want to be really sensitive to Kate and to the victims, and we feel badly. We didn't want her to have to endure that trauma. And
I'm
the
sorry,
court
you
is
have
like,
to lay your foundation. You didn't have to make that a point in your opening argument. You still have to lay a foundation.
Right, precisely. That's what any normal lawyer says. And I was just astonished as I'm listening to this argument. And the court actually, the bench says to them, I kind of expected you to ask the question is, if it's not these costumes, is the costume that you wore substantially similar to these costumes, and laid some sort of foundation, bring them in. And I understand why you didn't. And strategically it might make sense. And there could be a lot of reasons behind it. But at the end of the day, it's not been introduced. And there's serious questions here as to what the foundation is and what the relevance is. It got 401 and 403 issues here. So she's like, I'm gonna have to think about this and what to do with it over the recess. And she comes back from the recess and she's like, I can't. I'm gonna reject the admission of this evidence because unless you can show some other tie as to why this is relevant to what foundation we have. And if you think about it, I was talking to some people here. No one else is an attorney here but me. I'm literally sitting with a room full of reporters who, whenever there's some sort of legal question, like particularly this sort of thing, so I end up basically holding court on my own in a viewing room, trying to explain to people what's happening.
Get yourself in all of those articles and get verified. Do all the grift. Be like, look, you need to plug my YouTube channel. I will be your legal expert on the ground.
These are all low-level people.
It doesn't matter. They're writing for someone who's publishing it. Get it. Anyway,
yeah, I met people from NBC News. I met people from NBC News, the Epic Times, the Atlantic, the New Yorker. I have the defense counsel, which, look, I know you guys don't recognize their faces because you're not watching them every day. Around these parts, they're real celebrities because they're the same celebrities as Mark Richards was. Right. And they literally walk past me every break because I'm in the viewing room on the 5th floor and that's where they have their office. So I had a whole conversation. I had a brief interlude with Bobby Sternheim yesterday. And Laura Menninger actually is also part of the team. She walked by me this morning and I was like, that was a great cross you did today. She's like, oh, thank you. And because she really did do a good cross. Yeah. So,
sorry, I got distracted. But you are now giving the legal context to everyone in the Joeing room. The Joeing room. The chat's distracting me with your name. The Joe's room. You are holding court in the viewing room.
Yeah, it's Joe's room now. So anyway, let's get to what happened today. Yes. So I can basically give my quick update and if you can clip this part of it and send it to me, so this way I can upload it. This is really the part I want to sort of upload to my channel. So All right, cool. So we'll start go here. So this morning, we were actually wrapping up testimony from the Kimberly Mader, who's an FBI agent. She's the one who looked at various CDs that had been seized from the FBI's raid of Epstein's estates on 71st Street in the Upper East Side here. And really, there was very little that came in that was notable. They spent an extensive amount of time going through various photos of Jeffrey and Ghislaine together. Nothing illicit in any sort of way, shape, or form. Honestly, they look like your typical loving couple. Sometimes she's kissing him, sometimes he's holding her, and just one picture after another that was stored on these CDs in Epstein's townhouse and up on the Upper East Side. And the only thing that came in that was under seal that they didn't allow us to see was there was one photo of Ghislaine that was under seal that was protected for her privacy. So we have to assume there was some level of nudity in that. And there was also a photo of Virginia Roberts. It was one of the few names that they actually use of victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And that's one of the few names that they use, which that they don't try and hide that one, I guess, because she's so public in her accusations of Jeffrey Epstein that she's abandoned any desire to retain anonymity.
And she has sued, hasn't she individually sued Maxwell as
Yes.
well? And she's got a book.
Yes.
Like she is she's been very public with her face and her name in connection to all of this.
I'm pretty sure
she was
the first one who really went public on all of these accusations, and she was sort of the cracking of the ice and the attack on his reputation in the first place. So Menninger did cross. She actually did, and she was basically saying, when you're looking at these photos, you don't know where these photos were taken. You don't know who took these photos. You don't know when they were uploaded. You don't know if they were altered. You don't know anything about these photos, other than what we're seeing here. But for all you know, basically someone else could have altered them before they got onto the CD in the first place. Right. And the expert for the FBI basically was like, yeah, I got to admit that. And they brought on Stephen Flatley, and he had the exact same issues when he was a computer expert from the FBI. And he was talking about various Word documents that he had found. One of them was an advertisement that was produced on a Word account from someone who goes by G Max, which is clearly very likely Ghislaine Maxwell. And that on this, and that he found various Word documents and emails. So some of the emails correlate and corroborate Juana Leslie's story as to how she was so abusive. And it's emails between Ghislaine Maxwell and another woman, Sally, where she's complaining about the fact that he doesn't get the right creams in the right place, all the, look stocked up, and he has to make sure that he's buying Downy, not some other brand. Like just like anything he's doing that's not exact. That he has to get tied. You must get tied, not
right. Not anything else.
Yeah, it has to be tied. And how many times do we have to tell them that it has to be tied, and they should be changing the scent every 2 to 3 months? It should be fresh. It should be a different scent. Like these are the demanding things that they were putting in about her. But the key thing was, I think, an advertisement for a masseuse
right. that
was created from that account. And again, on cross, Menninger was basically like, so this is a Word document. Is it not true that if someone opens up Word on a computer, anyone opens up Word, that it would open up and it would reflect her name on it? And he's like, that's true. He's like, and you don't know if this was protected, this was even password protected, this computer or not. And he's like, well, we went straight into the mainframe. We went straight into the hard drive. We didn't go through the operating system. So no, we don't know if it was protected. And she's like, and you don't know the location of the computer that it was kept at all times, or at the time that these documents were created. For all you know, it was kept in the kitchen. There were plenty of people walking by. And he's like, we don't know the location. So, right. She's making a good point that, yeah, it looks like Ghislaine Maxwell did it, but you can't know beyond the shadow of doubt. Now, that's you and me as far as lawyers. We understand that these are real issues. I think a jury who probably doesn't like this woman, to give her that sort of benefit of the doubt that someone else came onto her computer and happened to write up an advertisement for a masseuse it's really giving her a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt,
I think so. And I
considering
also
everything else we know about her.
Yeah, and I also think we've heard about how kind of draconian she was in the way that she was treating her household staff. So who would even feel secure going on her computer? Like, who would
Great
even
point.
think that that's okay if she
Great
is kind
point.
of ruling this house with an iron fist? Who would do that? They're all afraid
Yeah.
of her, is what I'm hearing
The
from
house-
the testimony.
Yes, great point. The house manager himself was basically constantly being scolded. Anyone who might have worked underneath him, the chef or whoever, they're sure as hell not going to go in there and start creating an advertising for a new masseuse.
And
So,
if they would, it would have been at her direction.
right, correct,
So
correct.
6 of one, half dozen of the other. And the jury's gotten this overall impression, it sounds like, of how she was as a boss. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought the same takeaway of no one's just going to sneak onto her computer. Like that doesn't make sense.
You have to be out of your mind.
Right.
Yeah, it's like I'm getting my hands chopped off if I touch her keyboard.
Right.
So why would I and to log on there so I can make an advertisement for masseuse? Like that's what I'm going to do?
Right.
Really? So, and it's like a live-in masseuse in a house. Who the hell else is doing that? Yeah, that's one unless he's looking to hire a masseuse all of a sudden now, right? That's what he's got time for massages. So anyway, so that was relatively short testimony, really boring stuff for the first 2 hours. And then and just before noon, we got introduced to a woman named Carolyn, which is her actual first name. She wants to keep her last name private in order to retain her anonymity.
Right.
And Carolyn's story is I'm going to warn your audience, it's horrific. It's horrific. This woman has had a terrible life, literally since she's 4 years old, but it only got worse when she met Jeffrey Epstein. So, unlike the first two victims, I'll just take note of the fact that she looks like she's been worn away by life. She looks, by my math here, there's no way she's over 40 now. And she could be, let's see, because in 2002, we're not sure if in 1999 or 2, there's some confusion because on direct, they weren't clear what year she first met Jeffrey Epstein. It just came like, she's 13. She was 13. She was 13 when this happened. Or 14. And, yeah, but right now, I look at her, she looks like she's 50. And there's no way that she's over 40. So, and unlike the first two, the first two looked really athletic, and she looks far thicker. We'll just put it that way.
As one can do when life happens.
I'm not saying this as a criticism. I'm just trying to put you in the seat of the jury. I'm trying to let you see what the jury is seeing.
Yes.
So I'm not passing judgment. A lot of men prefer that. I'm just sharing with you. I'm your eyes. I recognize that. So I'm just trying to serve as your eyes. There's no judgment here. I'm just trying to give you facts, or what any impression I think someone would take from looking at the situation that I'm looking at. So Carolyn basically grew up in New York, moved to Florida in 1999. She dropped out of school in 7th grade. She used drugs. She used painkillers and cocaine. She moved to Palm Beach with her mom and her brothers. She was very lonely. Her mom was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And, she was asked, how did you make any money? She said, I went to Jeffrey Epstein. So she said she met Jeffrey Epstein through her boyfriend, Sean. Sean was 17 when she met her, and she was 13. And she said, how did Sean find out that you were and that she had lied and said she was 17. And she's like, how did Sean find out that you were 13? Well, he came to my 14th birthday party.
Wow.
Yeah. So Sean was friends with a guy named Tony and another girl named Virginia Roberts. So the four of them used to hang out and basically smoke marijuana. And Virginia came to her and told her, hey, if you want to make some money.
Right.
And she basically got brought by Virginia to this pink mansion. And at her first encounter there, there's some dispute here as to whether she said, tell them you're 17, or she didn't say, whether she lied about her age or didn't have to bother lying about it. But she ends up in a massage room with Virginia Roberts. Virginia, she says, got completely undressed. She left herself in her underwear, and Epstein comes in there, and 45 minutes into a leg massage that they're giving, all of a sudden he rolls over, and Virginia alone engaged with him, and she watched.
Which is part of this normalizing and using other victims to recruit, bringing
Right.
people in. That's all part
Right.
of the process. It doesn't mean, again, Virginia has been groomed to do these things too by them. So it's just this whole
But
kind of
along the way,
tiered system, which is crazy.
now I will caution you, as I'm listening to her story, what I'm looking for is, okay, how can we use this as a conviction of Ghislaine?
Right.
I mean, so far, everything here is now Virginia seems like the groomer, taking the role of Ghislaine, tying this into Ghislaine. It's a tricky thing to just say, like, Virginia's doing it, so now Ghislaine, that's the reason to find Ghislaine guilty. Even if she did it to Ghislaine, even if Ghislaine did it to Virginia, motivated her to become a groomer, that's really a far step removed to say that now we're going to convict her, because I'm not saying you can't do it. That's not my call. I'm just saying it's very different from Ghislaine being directly involved in getting a 14-year-old involved in servicing Jeffrey Epstein.
Now, is this the later discovered victim? Because when there was some recent court filings that had the victim that tied this time frame up into the 2000s, is this that individual that's testifying now then that was in those later years?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'll tell you. Because there's so many victims, and it gets so confusing over this woman versus that woman. I'm not sure. I know. I'll tell you. Yeah, I do. I need Robert. I need to steal this. I need to steal Robert Gruler's mind map, so I keep track of what's going on here, and I can sell it to my audience. I'll be like, look, give me $5 a month. I'll give you my new improved mind map. Yeah,
but it is a lot of moving pieces. It's a very complex case, though. The facts are horrific, and the story of the facts is following along a similar trajectory. The amount of people involved makes this very complex with the moving pieces.
Yes. So, right. Yeah. So let me just wrap up here, because I think I do need to start getting back inside.
Yes.
So she basically said that she used to do it to get drugs, and she broke down crying when she was explaining why she did it. Yeah. And she said that she'd been abused since she was 4 years old. She was being raped by her grandfather. Just awful life. Like, just, you feel so much pity for this woman. I mean, just a terrible life. And that she was getting paid like $300 a pop, which look, in 94 through 97, so we know that Jane was getting and Kate, they were only getting $100. So that really does sound more consistent with being 2002, 2003, that they would have, as much money as Epstein had, he didn't throw it around. He's not someone who's like, here's an extra 500 for you at all. That
would defeat what he was doing. You've got to keep people dependent enough, and keeping them dependent enough is meting out money. So it's enough that they're like, oh, I don't want this to end, but it's not so much that they can start socking it away so they can leave. That's intentional. Right. Yeah.
Now, with respect to their knowledge of her age, she claims that Virginia asked her if she'd be willing to travel with them. And she's like, I'm only 14. My mother's never going to let me go. Or I'm only 15 at this point. My mother's never going to let me go. And that Jeffrey Epstein had also asked her whether she'd be willing to travel. And she's like, I'm only 15. I can't go. But the point is that there's knowledge there as to how old she is, because they continue bringing her back, even though they knew how young she was. Right. In fact, they had her bringing classmates who were like the same age, some a year older. She brought in like 3 or 4 girls herself, who were like classmates. And that when she brought a girl, and like she would get paid double. She would basically get, if you bring someone in, if you service, you get 300. If you service and bring someone in, you get 600.
Right. It's like LuLaRoe. You get paid for recruiting. She was getting paid for recruiting. It's awful.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so disgusting. It is so everything about this case.
The thing about this case that I think is really valuable is that A, it has the public attention, and B, this is kind of a classic. When you look at prosecutions of sex trafficking and these types of abuses, this is how this happens. So this
Yeah.
is bringing a lot more public awareness. It's horrific that these women went through this, but it is bringing more attention and awareness to what these processes look like, so that people can either see it in their friends, so that parents can talk to their kids about it, so that there is just
Right.
more awareness of how this happens. And I think that that's really valuable.
Right.
So,
Right. So the question is how strong her testimony is going to be, considering the fact that she was on drugs throughout this whole time. I will tell you that there was that's a consistent theme. And it seems like these girls tend to use drugs and alcohol to numb themselves to the pain that they're feeling from experiencing Jeffrey Epstein on a regular basis. And so it's not surprising that it's probably a common theme of girls who are abused, that they end up getting involved in drugs and alcohol. And but at the same time, from the position of the defense, he's like, so now it's 15 years later, so memories tend to naturally fade over time. What about the memory of someone who was on drugs and alcohol at the time? Right. Now, what Kate actually said was interesting and may play out here is that because they were snobs, because they didn't want girls to come in there trashed. She's like, I could never come in there drunk. I could never come in there strung out on drugs. I had to always be sober when I showed up. They would tell me when I'm coming and I would have to make sure I was sober. And that's why the memories I have are so strong. That and the fact that these memories were really meaningful. But she's, and that's what Kate explained. So it's possible, if not likely, that they probably had similar rules with respect to Carolyn, and saying, we're not going to have you come in here looking trashed.
Right.
It's like beneath Epstein to have a girl trash. He's not looking for white trash. He wants to feel like, he's the king of actually someone who has value. The sickest thing about this is she's like, they said, why did you stop? Why'd you stop when you turned 18? When you were 18 years old? Because she said she did this from age 14 to 18. She said I was too old.
Wow.
I was too old for him at 18.
And that's what the jury is going to stick with. I had a case, it was one of my first felony trials, and the witness witnessed a woman who was prostituting herself being robbed during a transaction with someone she was going to be prostituting herself with, who was also selling drugs. So my victim, or my witness, had gone down to find the guy to buy drugs because he had gotten cut off at the bar because he was so intoxicated. And so this is the witness that I have that saw everything that happened and saw this woman, attacked, assaulted, and then her money being taken. And when the defense was cross-examining him, they go through this whole line of, well, you were so intoxicated. He goes, yeah, but I've been drinking since I was 10. Like, I'm used to being drunk, and I was not drunk enough. That's why I was looking for drugs. And she goes, so how are we supposed to believe that you remember this? And he looked directly at the jury and said, I've never seen a woman beaten like that. And it was horrific. And the event was so sobering. And they found him very credible, even though he was under the influence, even though he was an alcoholic drug user with a very long history. That moment was so powerful to him that it was burned into his memory. And that's what he said to the jury. And they convicted the defendant of assaulting and robbing someone who was there to engage in illegal activity. But it was
makes sense.
It does make sense. And I hope that the prosecution brings that around for the jury in their argument, that these things are so traumatic that sometimes they are just burned in the brains of the victims. And it doesn't matter what they were trying to do to numb it. The reason they were trying to numb it is because it is burned into their brains and they can't make it go away, even with drug and alcohol use. So hopefully the prosecution will hit on that. Joe, I know you've got to get going and get back. Thank you so much for your generosity and your time. I will clip this and send it to you so that you can put it up. Thank you for doing the hard work of sitting on those horrible seats in a courtroom all day long to keep us really engaged in what's going on in this really important trial.
I am going to urge your viewers that you should please, you want to find out anything about the Maxwell case, there's literally no other lawyer you can follow who's here and watching and can give an explanation as to what's going on here and explain to you what's happening the way that I can, because sadly no other lawyer is able to dedicate this kind of time to actually coming down to the courthouse and there's ridiculous rules of federal court that they won't televise this. I also recommend following Gruler also, because he does a great job in breaking this stuff down.
Robert Gruler's been breaking it down. You've been breaking it down. We're going to link you in the description. I've got your page pulled up here as we are chatting, since we've got you calling in, so that people can go find Good Logic and subscribe and follow.
Oh, and when you subscribe, when you subscribe, I will tell you this.
There's rules for subscribing.
Yeah, there are, because Susan really hates me, and I cannot make a stream without getting comments. Wow, I didn't know you were streaming. I was unsubscribed from you for the last.
I'm
I don't even know.
unsubscribed from you. I'm so embarrassed. I've had this up on the screen the whole time, and I'm unsubscribed from you.
That's what happens. Everyone gets unsubscribed from me. The best way the only way you can hope to stick. The only way you can hope to stick is when you subscribe. You have to hit the bell, personalize all notifications, because otherwise, they figure you don't really love him. So why should we keep you around? And we want to cut his numbers as much as possible. So
absolutely,
that's the rule: is subscribe, hit the bell, and if you can, if you see something you like, just please share, because I want to try and bring the truth of this trial to as many people as I can. All I can do is put the message out there. It's up to people like viewers in your audience to share it in order for it to actually get seen by anyone but a small window of people.
Absolutely.
So,
bring in the facts and the logic. I've got people in the comments already saying I got unsubscribed. I got unsubscribed too. I didn't even notice until I looked over and I was like, oh wait, that shows that I'm not subscribed. I was. So Joe, what do you call your audience? Are they the Logitics? What are we calling them?
Oh, they call themselves logicians.
Logicians. I love it. So
yes.
The logicians,
Right.
I'm sure here in the chat, absolutely. Go follow Good Logic. The mods will put his link in. I already put the link in. Everybody's like, hit subscribe twice. Don't do that.
No.
just the one will do you. And
just
don't worry,
the one, yeah.
YouTube will unsubscribe you and you'll get to subscribe again. You'll get to have this experience more than once. It happens on my channel too, Joe. I totally feel you. So absolutely go, and thank you so much for bringing us all the facts, not the fuckery today. I appreciate you.
Emily, this was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
you
so much fun to chat with you, Joe. Have a great day, and head back to court, and we'll see your reports later tonight.
Catch you soon. Godspeed.
Right. Have a good one. Bye. All right. Let me turn off the phone so I don't get some kind of weird echo. If my phone starts to ring again, what I don't want is for all of you to have to hear it. And that was Joe. So glad we absolutely got the breakdown from what's going on in court. That was such a great conversation about the case. I'm going to clip this down. It'll be on Joe's channel, I'm sure. Go and subscribe. It just is so funny. You guys in the comments are like, that explains why I'm not subscribed anymore. It does happen on YouTube. The unsubscribe is real. And the one thing that I love about LawTube is there are a lot of different lawyers with a lot of different backgrounds, different experience, different work experience, different states, different areas of law. And if you're interested in these kind of breakdowns, go look at what everyone's doing. We all cover things from a different perspective because we cover it from our own perspective. And Joe is sitting in court every single day. Robert Gruler has when we joked about the mind map, it is a huge mind map of all the moving pieces in this case. I'm going to have to do one for pop culture. He's already done one for this, and it is fascinating stuff. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Viva, it was so good to see you in the chat. I am going to absolutely jump into talking about Tati Westbrook stuff. So we are going to do that. Viva Fry, I love it. I am going to be on Sidebar with you tomorrow night. I'm very excited. So we've got to talk about what's going on in this Tati Westbrook case. It's not going to be by way of a palate cleanser, unfortunately, because there is shoulder squeezing. We're back to shoulder squeezing in the Tati Westbrook case. I'm going to just timestamp this real quick, and then we are going to go through the latest motions in that case. Thank you all for being here. We don't do a ton of interviews here, so a huge thank you again to Joe. Don't forget to go like and subscribe, and let us talk Tati Westbrook. Y'all, I can take my headphones out now. I can do that now. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully you heard the swoop. You might not have. We're going to swoop it again so I can hear it. I didn't hear it. There we go. Hopefully somebody heard it. I don't know. I'm taking the headphones off because now I'm just talking to myself. And we're going to talk Tati. Let me pull that document back up and tell you where we're at. You guys are like, swoop, swoop. We did. We swooped. Let us see where we're at. And pull up the stuff. We got a little, we got to switch gears here. We talked a little bit about the Tati Westbrook case, the background way earlier in the stream. For those of you that are still here, God bless you for being a law nerd. The Westbrook case is a multitude of cases at this point. The one we're talking about today is the defamation case that is between Tati Westbrook, James Westbrook, their business partner or former business partner, Clark Swanson. This is the one that's going on in Washington state, not the one that's going on in Nevada, not the one that's been filed in California, the Washington state. This is the most recent or the latest filed one. This is the FAQ. You can see at the bottom here, it's 206 pages. It has a lot of exhibits. We're not going through the FAQ. We've already gone through it. We're just going briefly through the fact that this is, in fact, I don't want to get into all the operative facts. Come on, computer. My computer's like, no, we're tired. This is a defamation case at its heart. Truly, let me pull this up again and see if it will, pull up all of the pages. Thank you for pulling up all of the pages this time. And I was just going to go to the causes of action here so you could see it, not the operative facts. I was scrolling too quickly for my computer. But this is essentially a defamation case that's taking place like in a very lawsuit inception kind of a way. So defamation libel from the letter that they are saying is privileged. That's the Fuchs, the Doug Fuchs letter. Fuchs, however you want to pronounce Fuchs. Sometimes we pronounce it sassy, sometimes we don't. But the Fuchs letter, that's going to come up today. We've talked about it on this channel. You guys know that I actually got a cease and desist from Clark Swanson over the publication of that letter on my channel. That letter is in fact attached here as a part of the court record. False light is along the same lines, invasion of property along the same lines, civil conspiracy along the same lines. Plaintiff realleges and incorporates that John or Jane Doe and the Westbrooks acted in concert to destroy Mr. Swanson's reputation by defaming him. And then we got into the Westbrooks filing their answer and cross complaints. From the answer and cross complaints, we got some new allegations. This is the one that has the outrage causes of action. We covered that in a separate video. That video will be linked below, but it gave a lot more detail. It talks about the work environment that is being alleged. Again, allegations and shade. It talks about this conversation that was recorded. There's differences of opinion about whether it was recorded legally or illegally. It talks again about the fact that the lawsuit they're alleging was leaked to a YouTuber without a crystal ball, who then discussed it, who was then later sued by the Westbrooks for defamation. That case settled. And in the settlement, based on the information that is public, in that settlement, the Westbrooks didn't release anything on that settlement. It was only on KJ's channel that it was released. But it seemed that that settlement relied heavily on the fact that the source for the stories was the business partner. So that's where we're at. This is the answer with all the denials, the affirmative defenses, and then the additional causes of action in the cross complaint. So now the Westbrooks are also suing Clark Swanson for outrage, for invasion of privacy under California common law, for invasion of privacy protected by the California state constitution, for invasion of privacy, and for, I think there's one more, abusive process with regard to the lawsuits. And is there another one? No, that's it. So these are the underlying documents that get us to today. The Westbrooks filed the answer saying we deny this shit, and filed the cross complaint saying, and also we're suing you for this other stuff. So that is where that cross complaint comes in. And now we have Swanson filing a motion to strike. It is a fairly brief motion to strike, but then we also have the Westbrooks responding, including a declaration from Tati Westbrook talking about the work environment and working with Clark Swanson. So let us get in here. Bridget is asking if I have figured out how to properly pronounce Maxwell's name. No, my brain refuses to accept any pronunciation. We're going to go with all of them all the time. So this is Clark Swanson's motion to strike. It was filed on November 24th, 2021. So right over Thanksgiving week. And this is Already facing a defamation lawsuit, defendants James and Tatiana Westbrook have now filed an answer and counterclaims that include ad hominem allegations that the plaintiff, Clark Swanson, inappropriately touched Miss Westbrook and otherwise acted unprofessionally towards her. Footnote 1. Footnote 1. In an effort to minimize any further damage to Mr. Swanson's reputation, this motion does not repeat in full the Westbrook's false and scandalous allegations. I will say that it is my initial impression, that the first stone was thrown in all of this by Swanson, who filed a lawsuit that started with, "This is a lawsuit based on the defendant's greed," and made quite a lot of statements about things Tati said about her audience and things that could be perceived as damaging to reputation. Of course, they're said in a lawsuit, allegations and shade. That lawsuit that was then broken by someone on YouTube. The story was broken by them, reported first. And then that lawsuit was then picked up in worldwide media. So when we're talking about how we got to here with the back and forth of everybody, is because we started with a lawsuit that was full of salacious and scandalous details that got picked up by the media, and now everyone's invested and wants to know. So I don't know, turnabout's fair play, I think, but they are taking umbrage with the ad hominem attacks. However, it is context. And so even though they're saying these are personal attacks instead of positional attacks, it seems that it's offered in these lawsuits for context. But also, was Tati Westbrook saying, "Oh, I could sell whatever," or being alleged to have said, "Oh, I could sell whatever shit to the audience" in Swanson's lawsuit? Was it necessary? Was it context? Was it shade? Was it all of the things above? They go on to allege that the legal basis for the Westbrooks' counterclaims, however, are not based on this alleged conduct. Instead, they are premised on a challenged recording of Swanson's filing of a business-related lawsuit against the Westbrooks in California that since has been dismissed because of because of forum nonconvenience, essentially, jurisdiction. The Westbrooks' inflammatory allegations about Swanson's purported workplace behavior provide no factual or legal support for the Westbrooks' counterclaims. Permitting the Westbrooks to make such irrelevant allegations in their pleadings would only further the Westbrooks' effort to damage Swanson's reputation, which is the heart of what he's saying the defamation case in Washington is. Mr. Swanson respectfully requests the court strike paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 on page 17 of the Westbrooks' answer. Should we go look exactly at those? I feel like we should. So paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 on page 17 of the Westbrooks' answer. This should be the Westbrooks' answer. Let's go to page 17. This is why it matters to have the lines line up. Where's page 17? This is the story of a girl. Sorry, it's just in my brain. That's page 20. That's page 19. That's page 18. This is page 17. So they are asking to strike paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 of the factual section of the cross complaint. Fred, now is not the time to step on the keyboard. All right, you can hang here. Fred is back again. All right. 2, the Westbrooks were embarrassed by Mr. Swanson's conduct in the Halo Beauty workplace. He was grossly inappropriate and unprofessional. In addition, they say, or they allege in their factual section of the cross complaint, Mr. Swanson's behavior towards Miss Westbrook was disturbing to the Westbrooks. When working in the same space, Swanson inappropriately touched Miss Westbrook without her consent. For example, coming up behind her and grabbing her waist, rubbing her shoulders and back, hovering over her from behind, sitting next to her and grabbing her thighs. No, never, never. Or rubbing her feet. Mr. Swanson continued to engage in his inappropriate touching, no touching, of Miss Westbrook, despite the fact that Miss Westbrook expressly and repeatedly told Mr. Swanson to stop touching her. No touching. Mr. Swanson also made demeaning comments by Miss Westbrook, demeaning comments to Miss Westbrook, shamed her, and yelled at her in front of others. By way of example, Swanson would talk down to Westbrook, telling her that she was incompetent to run a company, and make comments to the effect that women are too stupid and not wired to be effective leaders. Ultimately, after several unsuccessful interventions, the Westbrooks determined that Mr. Swanson's erratic behavior and the inappropriate physical touching and comments directed at Miss Westbrook were not going to stop. So they go on to allege that that's the point where litigation kind of began, and that's really where the ultimate ending of this relationship began. And you guys, if you have followed along these lawsuits forever, one of Swanson's early on companies was an erectile dysfunction medication that had some also very scandalous and salacious advertising. I don't know if those are still on the internet. They were in one of the filings. Which filing, I don't remember, because we've been doing this for a year. So that's what they're asking to have stricken. Statement of facts. We've seen the facts. We know what the facts are. There's been lots of facts. The Westbrooks, they say in August 2020, Mr. Swanson sent the Westbrooks a demand letter outlining the Westbrooks' wrongful conduct. That same month, the Westbrooks responded with a letter that contained numerous irrelevant and demonstrably false statements, including recklessly claiming that Mr. Swanson was addicted to drugs. In October 2020, Swanson individually and on behalf of Halo sued the Westbrooks for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud in California. Sometime later, a YouTube commentator named Emily Baker, oh, good God, when we should read things in advance. And it's Emily D. Baker. I mean, at least link the channel. No, I'm teasing. A YouTube legal commentator. Now I'm just adding things in. Hello, I'm Emily Baker. Emily D. Baker. A YouTube commentator named Emily Baker reached out to the Westbrooks Council. I reached out to the Westbrooks Council with regard to the KJ case, not with regard to the Swanson case, but that's fine. We've talked about this later. According to a video Miss Baker later posted, the Westbrooks Council gave Miss Baker the Westbrooks response letter. Well, not specifically, which Miss Baker predictably published in its entirety on her YouTube channel. I don't know if I've published the entire thing. But it's down now, but it's attached here. So maybe we should just reread it because it's attached here. The lawsuit shout out is still a weird phenomenon of being a legal commentator on the YouTubes. In June 2021, Westbrook, a beauty influencer with a mass following, published a video on YouTube in which she commented on Mr. Swanson's California lawsuit and made further defamatory statements about Mr. Swanson. She decried that Mr. Swanson had been leaking private and business information that she felt he had committed sabotage. I have got to go find that video again and see which one they're talking about, if it's still up. Later in the same month, Mr. Swanson filed this lawsuit in response to the Westbrooks' continuous and systematic effort to harass and defame their business partner, to harm his reputation, and obtain a business advantage. Mr. Swanson asserts claims for defamation, false light, and invasion of privacy, all of which relate to the Westbrooks' repeated attempts to harm Mr. Swanson's personal and professional reputation. I think everyone's lobbing accusations at one another in these multitude of lawsuits, but he's definitely hurled them at the Westbrooks as well in these legal filings from what we've covered here. The Westbrooks filed counterclaims for outrage and invasion of privacy. We just covered that. The Westbrooks counterclaims include statements comprising the, quote, factual basis that are wholly unrelated to the legal issues they have pled. Well, from their perspective, these statements include gratuitous allegations that Swanson was inappropriate and unprofessional. The Westbrooks then lob ad hominem attacks at Mr. Swanson, inappropriately touching Miss Westbrook, and made demeaning comments. So they then go into the authority of striking portions of a complaint. They said it would be particularly unfair to allow the Westbrooks to make such provocative allegations when their allegations are irrelevant. Footnote 2. Indeed, Miss Westbrook has suggested that she may read and discuss the pleadings on her YouTube channel with over 8 million subscribers. See Tati clearing the air. And there's a link to that one, which is always helpful. To any of the issues that will be actually litigated in this matter. So they're saying all that shit is just irrelevant and salacious, and it's only in there for reputational harm. Whether or not Clark Swanson put things in the original lawsuit a year ago to harm Tati's reputation. I will let you look at the coverage of that lawsuit and decide for yourself what your impression of that is. They say instead, the only purpose these statements serve is for the Westbrooks to publicize their allegations in an attempt to sway public opinion against Mr. Swanson and further harm his reputation. And that's the footnote we got to. So quickly, we are going to go to the response from the Westbrooks that was filed in December 3rd, 2021, so last week. And then we will be moving on. I don't know if any of this would have come to YouTube if it hadn't, leaked. Not leaked. That's not a leak. If it hadn't been promoted on YouTube, if the story hadn't been broken on YouTube, and the allegations in the Nevada suit are that was at Clark's behest, that he reached out to a YouTuber and said, I've got a story. Well, I've got a story for you to break in essence. And that's all of what the Nevada suit is alleging that Clark did. So it's just this back and forth of yeah, but a YouTuber said this, and yeah, but a YouTuber said this. It just seems like this has gotten to a point of mutually assured destruction based on not just this case, but the Nevada case as well, where they are lobbing allegations and hurling allegations at one another there too. So this is filed by the Westbrooks. First, contrary to the unsupported denials in plaintiff Clark Swanson's motion to strike, the allegations in the answer and counterclaims about Mr. Swanson's inappropriate conduct towards and unwanted physical touching of defendant Tatiana Westbrook are true. I've read that awkwardly. Contrary to the unsupported denials in the motion to strike, they are saying that the allegations about the inappropriate and unwanted physical touching are true. Footnote 1, Tati Westbrook declaration. In addition, Mr. Swanson himself put into the record the very information he is now seeking to strike by attaching to his complaint and the First Amendment complaint a letter prepared by the Westbrooks attorney, hereinafter the Fuchs letter, which contains the same information as in paragraphs 2 through 4 of the Westbrooks answer. The letter that Swanson is pissed about, he attached to both the complaint and the First Amendment complaint as exhibits. So it's already a part of the record that he created. They didn't bring it into this lawsuit. He brought it into these lawsuits, which is just mind-boggling because it's already part of the public record here. But okay. Moreover, far from being irrelevant and immaterial to the issues in this matter, they are saying the truthful allegations in paragraphs 2 through 4 of the Westbrooks answer directly relate to the Westbrooks' defenses to Mr. Swanson's allegations in the FAC that the Fuchs letter was full of false and defamatory statements. So they're saying the letter's not defamatory because we're saying that shit's true. And if that shit's true, then it's not defamatory because it's true. Footnote 2. Not sassy. Just the First Amendment complaint. All of these footnotes are just citing back to other documents. I'm not going to go through them. So, the Fuchs letter is the heart of this as well. Statement of facts. Swanson and the Westbrooks own a nutraceutical business together consisting of two companies, Halo Beauty Inc. and Halo Beauty Partners. As laid out in both the answer and the Fuchs letter. The Fox letter? What does the Fox say? Sorry, my brain. Mr. Swanson's conduct in the Halo Beauty workplace was often grossly inappropriate and unprofessional. See, Swanson this is where I see the error. Swanson's counsel brought more attention by seeking to strike 3 paragraphs of the answer and cross complaint that mimic information that's already in the underlying record that is part of the record, or the underlying First Amendment complaint that's part of the record, that it opened the door for the Westbrooks to now respond. So they are going to now respond, I imagine, in much more detail than they originally responded to. And that can't be inappropriate because they have to respond because he opened the door to respond because he included it in the first place by saying that it's defamation because the letter, which is covered by litigation privilege, is defamatory. Woof. Okay. As laid out in both the answer and the Fox letter, Mr. Swanson's conduct in the Halo Beauty workplace often was grossly inappropriate and unprofessional. After repeated failures to curb such behavior, the Westbrooks determined that Swanson's erratic and inappropriate behavior was not going to stop. In July 2020, the Westbrooks indicated to Swanson that they were planning to remove him from the day-to-day operations at Halo Beauty and not allow him to have any role in running the business. Swanson's reaction to this was to send a pre-litigation letter to the Westbrooks full of false and salacious allegations about the Westbrooks and falsely claiming an entitlement to the Westbrooks outside business. That would be the Tati Beauty palette and Tati Beauty. The Westbrooks attorney from the law firm of Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher responded with the Fuchs letter. The Westbrooks attorney, Fuchs, Fox, pointing out the falsehoods in Mr. Swanson's letter and providing context and documentary support for the Westbrooks' decision not to do business with Mr. Swanson beyond nutraceuticals and remove him from having an active role in Halo Beauty, which context included, inter alia, Mr. Swanson's inappropriate workplace behavior and physical touching of Miss Westbrook. Specifically, the Fuchs letter states, and again, what they are saying in this is, but we told him we were limiting his role in the business, and he sent us the pre-litigation letter, and we responded. So all of this started with Swanson, not us. So come on. That's how I read this. Specifically, the Fuchs letter states, quote, most problematically, however, Mr. Swanson behaved inappropriately toward women. In meetings with potential business partners, Mr. Swanson would address men and women in different tones. While he was generally respectful to men, Swanson would aggressively explain things to women in a condescending manner. Oh, aggressive mansplaining is what I think they're describing. That is how in my head, that is how I hear that. As aggressive mansplaining is what they're alleging. Mr. Swanson's behavior was bad for the Halo Beauty brand. Yeah, it's a brand targeted at women, and embarrassing for the Westbrooks personally. Women who worked with Halo Beauty also felt uncomfortable around Mr. Swanson. Mr. Swanson acted inappropriately toward the Westbrooks female staff and was often, quote, handsy, end quote. He would squeeze the Westbrooks assistant's shoulders. We hate a shoulder squeeze. Unless you have that relationship with someone expressly and specifically, shoulder squeezing is always creepy. No one wanted touching. No touchy. No touchy. He would squeeze the Westbrooks assistant's shoulders or Miss Westbrooks' knees and elbows and give unwanted hugs. Also, unwanted hugs. We hate those. Don't do that. The Westbrooks repeatedly requested that Mr. Swanson, keep his hands to himself and respect the physical privacy of others. The Westbrooks demanded that Swanson step down, not as a means of somehow stealing a corporate opportunity, but rather to protect Halo Beauty brand from the potential embarrassment and disaster. Footnote 9 is the citing to the Fuchs letter that Swanson admitted to court. Mr. Swanson's claims in the pending lawsuit are based in part on the statements in the Fuchs letter. The Fuchs letter was attached as Exhibit C of the FAQ and is part of the record in this matter. In fact, Swanson filed the Fuchs letter into record twice. The Fuchs letter was also attached as Exhibit C to the initial complaint Mr. Swanson filed in this matter. The allegations in paragraph 2 through 4 of the answer contain the same information as the Fuchs letter about Mr. Swanson's inappropriate conduct and physical touching. We already read paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, so we're not going to go through them. I didn't realize they were in here. Should have kept reading. Statement of issues. Should this be allowed to strike? 1, the factual allegations are true, they are stating. 2, Mr. Swanson himself previously filed into record the factual information he is seeking to strike. I mean, that's going to be the nail in the coffin on that one. 3, the factual allegations directly relate to Mr. Swanson's cause of action against the Westbrooks and the Westbrooks' counterclaims and defenses. Argument and authority, they're going to go ahead and cite the law about why it shouldn't be stricken. And Civil Rule 12F provides that a court may strike only redundant, immaterial, impertinent, or scandalous material. Maybe the information about Keemstar in the lawsuit that Kavanaugh filed would fall under that realm, but this is Washington. We're going to continue. Courts may look at federal decisions for guidance in interpreting civil rules when a Washington civil rule and its federal counterpart are substantially the same. Their conclusion is, for the foregoing reasons, it should be denied. Let us go to the declarations. This is James Westbrook's declaration. I am defendant and counterclaimant or counterclaim plaintiff. My wife, Tati, and I have been in business with plaintiff and counterclaimant Swanson since 2017. During that time period, I have witnessed Mr. Swanson demean and yell at my wife and otherwise act inappropriately towards her because she is a woman. I mean, that's a statement of opinion, but it's his declaration. In March 2020, after one of these episodes wherein I witnessed Mr. Swanson inappropriately demean and yell at my wife, I sent Swanson a stern email warning him that his days of treating my wife in such a manner were over. Attached is to Exhibit 1 is a true and correct copy of the email that I wrote on March 31st, 2020, and sent to Mr. Swanson telling him to stop yelling at my wife. In said email, I also stated that Swanson is not good with women in general and that he is a first-class chauvinist. Again, opinion. In doing so, I memorialized that Mr. Swanson's behavior toward women in general and my wife in particular had been an ongoing issue well prior to the commencement of this litigation. And then there is a exhibit. Exhibit 1, email. This email says draft. I assume that they have one that shows that it was sent. These are Halo Beauty emails. I know Clark, based on the Nevada suit, is no longer at Halo Beauty, which is why I'm not blanking out the business email addresses because they are publicly facing. So this is an email that purports to be from James Westbrook to Clark Swanson. He said in his signed and sworn declaration, it's a true and correct copy. It says, after an afternoon of you continuing to step on my toes, even after our call, I find your half-hearted apology to be insincere and your rationalization insulting, but please don't ever yell at my wife again, okay? As for her not being the same, that actually goes back to March of 2018. It has been one trial by fire after another. What you don't understand and never will is what it feels like to be the target of hate by thousands daily and still put on a brave face and show up and do your job. She sacrificed her health, her youth, her happiness, her peace of mind, and perhaps even her ability to have a child while helping you build this brand. Yelling at her and telling her that she was doing a bad job was probably the most moronic bad move I've ever seen you make in our business together. You are not good with women, dude. You come off as a first-class chauvinist. So it's, again, a perception. And if you don't think she notices, then you think she's stupid as well. Please keep your hands off of social media. Keep your nose I imagine that was intended to be off of our YouTube and other affairs. And for God's sake, try to find some empathy and gratitude for the woman that has sacrificed everything to help line your pockets with a few $1 million while you've been busy building your family. We're going to be okay, but please don't call for a few days. Life is far too short and precious for this sort of BS. I seriously rather walk away with nothing than endure this kind of crap for 2 years for $1 billion exit. Best, James. So it's a frank email. It doesn't talk about the touching. It does talk about the yelling. Declaration of Tati Westbrook. Same declarations. During the time I worked with Mr. Swanson, I have found his behavior to be grossly inappropriate and unprofessional. Again, this is her signed declaration. I found Mr. Swanson's behavior towards me to be particularly disturbing and unacceptable. When working in the same space, Swanson routinely inappropriately touched me without my consent. Swanson's non-consensual contact with me includes, but is not limited to, coming up behind me and grabbing my waist. Always a creepy move. I do not, just no touchy. Rubbing my shoulders and back, hovering over me from behind and invading my personal space, sitting next to me and grabbing my thighs, and grabbing and rubbing my feet when I was seated in a chair with one leg crossed over the other. I expressly and repeatedly told Swanson to stop touching me, but he continued to engage in his inappropriate touching anyways without my consent. In addition to said non-consensual touching, Swanson also routinely made demeaning comments to me, shamed me, and yelled at me in front of others. For example, Swanson talked down to me, telling me that I was incompetent to run our company, and made comments to the effect that women are too stupid and not wired to be effective leaders. As a result of Mr. Swanson's inappropriate conduct towards me, I did not feel safe being around him and attempted to limit all direct interaction and communication with him. It is my opinion that this, in large part, then caused Swanson to retaliate against me and my husband through the conduct that is the subject matter of my and my husband's claims against him. So this is like, okay, look, they are saying that this is what kind of predicated the entire breakdown. Swanson is saying what predicated the breakdown was Tati doing Tati beauty without it. So The last one is the declaration of Tashi Rinker. Over the age of 18, I worked as Tati Westbrook's personal assistant from approximately June 2016 through the end of May or early June 2018. I was employed by Miss Westbrook's company, Takes a Team Productions, LLC. At the beginning of my employment in 2016, my job duties included, but were not limited to, organizing what was needed for video shoots, product research for Westbrook's YouTube videos, picking up products for Westbrook's YouTube videos, and various other production assistant duties. Towards the end of my employment, my job duties evolved into also assisting with Westbrook's social media. But at all times during my employment for Westbrook, my job title was personal assistant. I'm wondering where this is going, but we'll see. I worked out of the Westbrook's Sherman Oaks location from which they shot and produced their videos. When I was not running errands, I typically worked at a desk at the location. At the busiest of times, there were other employees working at the location alongside myself with the Westbrooks. These other employees were the video editor and James's son. As Westbrook's personal assistant, I would sometimes stay longer than other employees. It is my understanding that the Westbrooks, Tati and James, formed a company called Halo Beauty with a man named Clark Swanson in 2017. After Halo Beauty was formed, I assisted Westbrook with some of the Halo Beauty customer service issues and social media after Halo Beauty's launch. In terms of social media, I helped Miss Westbrook create content calendars and worked with the in-house photographer to come up with social media copy. I believe I first met Swanson briefly at brunch in 2016. Mr. Swanson was introduced as a family friend. I saw Mr. Swanson again a few times in 2017, most memorably at the Westbrooks wedding in Hawaii. At the Westbrooks wedding, Mr. Swanson said in front of the 60 wedding guests that he wished he had met me on Tinder. I was 21 at the time. I believe he was in his late 40s. This statement made me really uncomfortable and was embarrassing for me. I remember responding by saying that wouldn't have happened because I didn't have my age range set for old men. Well, it's a snappy comeback. Wow. Okay. Though he made me uncomfortable and embarrassed, I did not say anything to the Westbrooks about his statements or behavior at the time. Well, because they were family. She believed they were family friends. That makes sense. In 2018, Swanson was around the Westbrooks Sherman Oaks location, my place of employment, a lot more because of the Halo Beauty launch. Swanson sometimes stayed after other employees left for the day. I often worked late with Ms. Westbrook during this time period, and Swanson would still be there. Swanson treated me like I was his assistant. However, at no time did I work for him. I recall James Westbrook reminding Swanson that I was Tati's assistant and that I did not work for Swanson. I think that's a typo because it says Miss Swanson, but I'm going with Swanson, was extremely misogynistic and demeaning in how he communicated with me and other women. He treated me like I was a 1950s assistant, meaning that he seemed to view me as just a pretty girl rather than a real person. That's impression. Swanson would also routinely invade my personal space and put his hands on me in a manner that made me feel uncomfortable. For example, in 2018, there were occasions when Swanson would come up behind me while I was sitting and stand too close over me, invading my personal space while I was working. This kind of echoes the Fuchs letter and the things that were in the Fuchs letter. So this, it seems, is the declaration of the person who gave them that information before the Fuchs letter was sent to Swanson, because that standing close was in that Fuchs letter. He put his hands on my shoulders and upper back. He stood directly over my shoulders at my workstation with his hands on my shoulders, which, by the way, renders you so you can't get up, which is one of the things that I always hated about having people stand behind my chair. You can't like push your chair back and get up. That's just my own visceral reaction to reading this. He squeezed my arms and my shoulders and was just generally creepy. I did not tell the Westbrooks about this, about any of this during my employment because I was embarrassed. However, I felt that Mr. Swanson's behavior, his words and actions were inappropriate. No woman should be touched like that without her consent. I agree. Let's not touch people in the workplace. Women in the workplace make excuses for behavior like that, but it's not okay. I remember conversations I had with Tati about how Mr. Swanson was demeaning, always mansplaining. Oh, I did interpret that correctly. It seems I'm not the only one who interpreted the aggressive explanation as mansplaining. Touching Miss Westbrook inappropriately, and how Miss Westbrook thought it was so unfair and hypocritical that Swanson advised her against getting pregnant because it could be a bad look for the brand if there was a miscarriage due to complications of her getting pregnant at a later age. Wow. I remember Miss Westbrook telling me that she felt demeaned in her professional encounters with Swanson and wanted to limit her interactions with him as much as possible. I witnessed that Swanson sometimes grabbed Westbrook's arm or grabbed her in ways that I thought were inappropriate. Westbrook told me that she hated how he treated her in business relationships and how he touched and grabbed her, and that he kept doing it no matter how many times she asked him to stop. Westbrook confided in me that she did not feel safe when Mr. Swanson was around and was concerned that his inappropriate behavior was increasingly becoming, and that would, I read this awkwardly, or this is awkward, one of the two. Miss Westbrook confided in me that she did not feel safe when Mr. Swanson was around and was concerned that his inappropriate behavior was increasingly becoming, and that would have a negative impact on Halo. I think it's just an awkward sentence. I did not tell the Westbrooks about Mr. Swanson's inappropriate behavior towards me until after I stopped working for Takes a Team Productions, LLC. Signed and dated from Jeff Belanco, whose name, or Jason Belanco, wrong one. There's a Jason and a Jeff, I think. But this is from, is it Jeff Belanco? Is Jason Belanco the paralegal? I'm confused. This is the counsel. Carol Biddle and Belanco was the law firm that was involved in the other Washington case. So we're still seeing Washington counsel. That is a lot. That is a lot. But I think for a lot of people who've watched Tati for a long time, you know, she's talked about wanting to have kids. I think it's very interesting that that comment is in here, and that they are saying in their sworn declaration that those comments were made. Again, lawsuits are allegations and shade, but this is a lot of context and a lot going back and forth in this case. So unfortunately, we have been streaming for like 3 hours and I have got to bounce. Joe gave us so much time, but I also didn't want to just cut the stream and then do a second part. But I am not going to be able to get to the rest of Super Chats. I will get them. This is a lot of new information. Let me know in the comments and let me know in the chat what your takeaways are from it. And we will see where this goes. And when the court rules on it, I will be sure to let you know. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a law nerd. I'm sorry for the quick cut and run, but we have got to go. Yes, thank you, Anna Catherine. It was Jeff. I wonder if there's two Belancos, because this said paralegal. So if there is a Jason and a Jeff Belanco, there's lots of Belancos, but okay. We called him Jazzy Jeff. Memory serves. Voice doesn't serve anymore, but memory serves. Thank you, law nerds. Thank you so much. I will be back on the socials at the Emily D. Baker, and I will talk to you soon. Okay. We have to go. Bye. Thanks for being a law nerd. Thanks for being here. All the things. Roll the outro. We got to go. Connect with me everywhere. I'm at the Emily D. Baker. If you guys want to join the text, just text Emily.com. If you want to join the channel, lawnerdsunite.com. Happy to have you. Support what we do here on the YouTube.